Chapter 11:27. Finally, the power of the Holy Grail outside became more and more violent. The god of acting was stirring, as if it would appear in the next moment, but it never happened. Chen Guang did not know that at this time, a piece of news that completely blew up the world suddenly appeared on the internet. The Oscar committee finally became manly and made a shocking decision. President of the American Film Association, chairman of the Oscar committee, Fred officially announces big news. For the first time in history, the Oscars will be awarded in advance. The founder of the world's performing arts, Chen Guang, wins 3 awards alone. The storm of public opinion for Chen Guang to be awarded the Oscar in advance became more and more intense, especially after the tens of millions of copies of World's Faction were fully released in North America. The box office of Women in the other 6 continents, excluding Antarctica, became even more intense, which in turn put a lot of pressure on President Fred. It was even to the extent that awarding the Oscar to Chen Guang in advance was truly a global political correctness. After an incomparably painful struggle and hesitation, President Fred and the others finally made a brave decision that night. This year's Academy Award for Best Actor, which meant that Chen Guang was fully deserving of it. But this was not the end. Women also won the Best Film of the Year in one fell swoop. Of course, it was also an early award, and the reason for awarding the award was extremely sufficient. Although the film was not perfect and had many flaws, as long as it was the first time that the world's performing arts had appeared on the big screen, it would be enough to make the film go down in history. Logically speaking, the Best Film Award was more of an honor for the film's director, but when it came to women, no one would think so. Even Big Beard Deng himself would not have such extravagant hopes. Everyone knew that this was for Chen Guang. But this was not the end. There was another award. As everyone knew, the Lifetime Achievement Award was not given every year. Only when a person who made a huge contribution to the film industry reached a special level and was recognized by everyone would this award be added in a certain year. In recent years, due to various reasons such as the market environment, the Lifetime Achievement Award was given almost every year, and its value had greatly decreased. However, Chen Guang had broken an incredible record. He was the youngest person to win the Oscar Lifetime Achievement Award in the shortest time since he entered the industry. He was also the only person to win the Lifetime Achievement Award after only acting in one movie. If the value of the Lifetime Achievement Award had declined in the past, then today, this award had become even more glorious because of Chen Guang. Then, as the video of President Fred's public speech was released, Chen Guang was instantly rewarded with the Oscars for Best Picture, Best Actor, and Lifetime Achievement. No one had expected the big shots of the Oscar committee to go to such extremes. They would either not do it, or they would do it all in one go. They decided to award 3 awards to Chen Guang in advance. They did not have to wait until the award ceremony to announce them to the public. What was even more outrageous was that no one in the world objected to it at all. Chen Guang took a deep breath and closed his eyes. His mind sank into the world and the cup again. He stood in the middle of Cloud City and looked up at one of the 3,000 empty platforms on the city wall. This platform was right next to the statue of the language master, which was right next to the sphere. An overwhelming amount of faith points flew in from all directions of the cup realm without any warning and landed on it. In the blink of an eye, a blurry shadow appeared. It was roughly the shape of a human. The facial features and outline of the human figure gradually became clearer, and the light became more and more intense. After a long time, when the light dissipated, a huge statue of 100 feet tall stood proudly on the platform. It was Chen Guang himself. The statue of the god of acting had finally appeared. Chen Guang flew up and stood under the statue. He looked up, but he did not know what to feel. It wasn't that Chen Guang was stunned by the statue that looked exactly like him, but he noticed that the statue's expression was very strange. It seemed to be expressionless, but at a glance it seemed that the statue was sometimes laughing, sometimes crying, sometimes angry, and sometimes proud. The dull face of the statue seemed to be filled with all the expressions of a human. Chen Guang thought to himself, as expected of the statue of the god of acting. The Holy Grail really was a roundworm in his stomach. Even the statue that it randomly captured was so exquisite. All right, I almost forgot. I can still change the appearance once. Chen Guang rolled his eyes. Make me more handsome. The statue's appearance changed slightly again. Every detail of its face was slightly modified. But if you looked closely, you would find that it had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes, and it was full of heroic spirit. After showing off for a while, Chen Guang sorted out his faith points production. The statue of the god of acting did not let him down. Its production was directly maxed out, reaching 5333333. Of course, this was also due to the constant growth of Lu Ming's fruit trees, which allowed the production of all the statues to steadily increase. Up to now, among the 8 statues of the Holy Spirit, only the pile driver statue that could not be improved maintained its daily production of 38,000. The other 7 statues were constantly improving with the growth of Lu Ming, reaching this number of 53,333. At the same time, the statue of the Language Master's Cup Realm and the statue of the God of Acting were 10 times the upper limit of the Holy Spirit statue, which was exactly 5333333. Adding the additional faith points from the Sea of Time and the Realm of True Martial, as well as the Fanatics, Chen Guang's daily production of faith points was as high as 1.59 million per day. But unfortunately, the huge mortgage loan he owed was still as high as 1.43 billion. With the current production, it would take him 903 days to repay the loan. But there was only 1 year and 11 months left for him. Exactly 700 days. To borrow a phrase often used on the Chinese national football team, there was not much time left for Chen Guang. He was still very desperate. He still had to quickly finish the 3rd statue of the god of one line, the strongest physical body. In fact, in a strict sense, it should be the strongest leg muscle group. The realm of true martial that cast his strongest martial arts was not the one-line sky, but the 4th level, the blue sky. Currently, the only thing that could be used to obtain the statue of God was the one-line sky training related to the leg muscles during the accelerated physical body formation. Apart from a special training that was done in batches, he had done it before. Of course, the easiest way was to get it all at once and achieve all the strongest physical bodies so that it could be done once and for all. With a complicated mood, Chen Guang retreated from the cup realm. Seeing that he was clean from head to toe, he had to pick up the cup and sneak back to the room like a thief. After changing into pajamas, Chen Guang lay on the bed and thought for a while. He didn't have to worry about the photo catalyst anymore. He could just leave it to Teacher Zhua. He didn't even have to worry about the application for the Scientific and Technological Progress Award at Tangshan Industrial Factory. He had sold a big favor to the Chinese Academy of Sciences. The final decision on the award was in the hands of the Chinese Academy of Sciences. As long as the finished product was taken out and put into practice at Tangshan Industrial Factory, Xiaoguang Environmental Protection would completely turn over. There was nothing for him to do here. When Sister Tang Ying arrived in Los Angeles, he would go back to China with her. The next day, Chen Guang held his last press conference in America. At this press conference, he received the 3 trophies that had been made in advance from President Fred. He expressed his gratitude and promised to attend the final award ceremony in March. In the afternoon, he went straight to the airport, ready to meet Tang Ying there, and then fly straight back to China. After waiting in the airport for a long time, Chen Guang saw Tang Ying and Tang Xiaokai walking side by side. Yo, Sister Tang Ying, Brother Xiaokai, why are you here? Chen Guang greeted the two with a smile. Although Tang Xiaokai was actually a few years older than him, they were now familiar with each other. Chen Guang didn't care so much. Tang Xiaokai looked at Chen Guang and Tang Ying, who stood side by side. I'm my sister's protector. I'm here to keep an eye on you, Brother Guang. Tang Ying stepped on Tang Xiaokai's foot. Shut up. Tang Xiaokai still refused to let it go. Sister, don't quibble. I've seen through your little tricks long ago. Have you forgotten? I've been calling Chen Guang brother-in-law for a long time. Chen Guang was secretly pleased at being called brother-in-law, but when he saw Tang Ying blushing, he couldn't admit it now. Don't talk nonsense. You must have something to tell me today. Tang Xiaokai was a busy man. He wouldn't come to a temple without a reason. He didn't have anything to do today, but he came. I knew I couldn't hide it from you. Tang Xiaokai shrugged. I do have something to ask of you. All right, you two take your time. I still have to change my boarding pass. Dr. Tang was not like Chun Guang, who had the Global Civil Aviation Association's Hero Medal. He could pick his seat no matter where he went. He had to do all the registration and ticket changes himself. While Tang Ying went to change her boarding pass, Chun Guang and Tang Xiaokai had a simple chat. It turned out that Tang Xiaokai had his eyes on Chun Guang's photo catalyst. They were all on the same side, and Chun Guang was easy to talk to. After some communication, Chun Guang accepted Tang Xiaokai's suggestion. Morning Light Group, which was independent of Tianguan Group, was officially launched. It temporarily included two major sectors. First, Xiaoguang Environmental Protection would be renamed to Morning Light Environmental Protection. The main business would remain the same, and the operation management and investment of the sewage treatment plant would be the direction of development. Second, the photocatalyst laboratory currently being built by Zhuo Jingxi would be officially named Morning Light Laboratory. Its main business would be the research and development of photocatalysts. Looking at Tang Ying, who was busy changing her boarding pass, Chun Guang started to ponder in his heart. The biological research facility that Tang Ying established with the Wujing University and Moreland's Institute of Medicine was mainly based on his genes. So it wouldn't be appropriate for him to ignore it. Why don't I fork out a portion of the money and become a major shareholder? If it was just Sister Tang Ying, it would be fine. But if she wanted to use my genes as a sample, the school and Moreland's Medical College would benefit for nothing. As for Tang Xiaokai's request, it was not complicated. He would not directly own shares in Morning Light Environmental Protection. Instead, he would represent the Tang Jie Foundation and form a separate company. Its main business scope was to promote the technology and results produced by Morning Light Laboratory to the world. It was essentially a sales company. This way, Zhuo Jingxi could focus more on research and not worry about other things. After all, the products needed to be sold around the world through other people's hands. Although Chun Guang's technology had a monopoly advantage, the market management could not be ignored. As for Tang Xiaokai's marketing ability and character, Chun Guang trusted him. Just like that, the two of them only spent 20 minutes discussing this important matter. On the other side, Tang Ying had already changed her ticket and was walking over. She was a little unhappy. I'm so angry. I originally booked a first-class seat, but it was inexplicably gone. I can't even change to business class, so I can only sit in economy class. Chun Guang comforted her. It's okay, it's okay. I'll also change to economy class and sit next to you. First class can't prolong my life. Tang Ying pouted. That's true, but Meizhong Airlines gave me economy class without my consent. They didn't even inform me in advance. This is not right. Chapter 1128. Chun Guang was also a little unhappy. Previously, the two of them had agreed to return to China together. Tang Ying had booked a seat first, and he had called the Civil Aviation Administration to book a seat next to Tang Ying. Originally, the two of them had agreed to sit side by side in the first-class cabin. With such a long flight, they might even be able to take the opportunity to do it like before. They might even be able to do something else. Asterisk off asterisk, but now it was all over. Tang Ying had been transferred to economy class. Meizhong Airlines was clearly not giving him any face. All right, he and Tang Ying had booked their tickets separately, so Meizhong Airlines might not be aware of their relationship. Since Chun Guang had taken quite a bit of advantage from the civil aviation industry, he felt that it wasn't a crime to be ignorant. Hence, there's no need for him to make a fuss over such a small matter, and he decided to let people off the hook whenever possible. In the past, he had always cut the queue and snatched other people's seats without paying. God knows how many people have been forced to descend because of a sudden whim. As the saying goes, those who do evil will bring about their own destruction. He had done too many bad things and could not avoid retribution. Although the retribution for the descent did not fall on his head, it was the same thing for Tang Ying. I have to help the airline company appease the angry passengers. With that thought in mind, his boat was crooked. I'm going to call their boss later. Calm down. Sister Tang Ying, calm down first. As he spoke, he patted Tang Ying's shoulder. Tang Ying glared at him. Why are you still speaking up for the airline company? Chuckling, Chen Guang replied, how can you put it that way? I'm not speaking up for them. In fact, I used to cause people to descend often. Let's be more understanding. The seats in economy class are a little narrow, and we can sit close together. It's fine. Forget it. I'm not that spoiled. I've even bought a special ticket that Eastern Airlines doesn't have. I'm just a little unhappy that they surrendered without saying a word. Tang Ying rolled her eyes and waved her hand. That's right. They are of low standards. I will really get the Civil Aviation Association to reprimand Meizhong airline staff. Okay? Chen Guang added. At this time, Tang Xiaokai, who was next to her, also helped to absolve her. That's right. I also know the global vice president of American Airlines. Sis, I'll help you redress this injustice. But don't worry about it today. You don't like to be special. Their airlines have always done things like this. Pan Am is slightly better, but American Airlines' service attitude in this area is indeed problematic. All right. Look at the two of you. You make it sound like I'm the one who's unruly and willful. The three of them chatted for a while. Tang Xiaokai had other things to do in Los Angeles, so he left first. There was still some time before takeoff, so Chen Guang and Tang Ying found a cafe in the airport lobby and sat down. After that, he called the Civil Aviation Association's specialist, who specialized in serving the highest-level VIP customers, to voluntarily downgrade from first class to economy class. Recipients of the Hero Medal had a higher priority than VIP customers. As soon as Chen Guang made the call, he naturally received the highest level of service. He enjoyed the same or even better treatment as top billionaires like Buffett, Gates, and Zuckerberg when they took private flights on commercial airliners. There was an extremely high level of confidentiality, even higher than that of ordinary U.S. government officials. Only the specialist, who personally adjusted the seat for him, knew what was going on, who wanted to change the seat, and how it was done. In addition, because Chen Guang's own reputation was too resounding recently, he did not want to cause too much of a stir when he returned to China. Therefore, when he contacted the specialist, he took the initiative to further increase the level of confidentiality. As for American Airlines, the highest-level security certification department knew the specific details. However, due to the confidentiality agreement, they would not immediately inform the Los Angeles airport and the ordinary staff on Chen Guang's flight. They did not need to know why, nor did they need to know who wanted to change the seat. They only needed to execute and implement it. The highest responsibility of the entire aviation safety system was the Safety Committee. With the Safety Committee's stamp of approval, the passenger's identity was already foolproof. When the passenger's identity was verified for the last time before departure, they could see the name Chen Guang, but before that, they were not qualified to check it in advance. Downgrading was difficult, and it was easy to offend people. However, allowing a lone passenger to be upgraded from economy class to first class for free was simply a matter of a phone call. What's more, in order to ensure that nothing went wrong with the seat, Chen Guang even took the initiative to provide the passenger with $2,000 in cash as compensation. After waiting for about an hour, the two finally got on the plane. Tang Ying stuffed her carry-on bag under her feet and complained unhappily, "I should have put my bag in the suitcase. Economy class is too narrow." Chen Guang wasn't any better than her. He also had a bag with him, which he used to store his laptop and the omnipotent Holy Grail. Look at you, Sister Tang Ying. One look, and I can tell that you've never lived a poor life. Don't even mention economy class. A year ago, when I was as poor as a doornail, I went to another city to do part-time work. I couldn't afford a berth, and I couldn't even get a seat ticket. All I could buy was a standing ticket and squat in the green train aisle for a whole night. What's this today? Tang Ying pinched Chen Guang's waist in annoyance. You're the only one who has a lot of life experience, okay? I don't deserve it. Chen Guang chuckled, sorry for not recognizing you. Sister Tang Ying, you're also very good. I used to think that the best doctors were in their 70s or 80s, but after meeting you, I realized that doctors in their 20s can also be so outstanding. Tang Ying was not moved by his flattery at all. You have the cheek to say such things? I won't talk about your other things. I won't talk about you, the newly minted Oscar winner. Just the photo catalyst that you created a while ago was able to attract the attention of laboratories like Prince, Alamo, and Cambridge. Even if there were 10 of me, I wouldn't be able to match your achievements. I think you're mocking me. Chen Guang was embarrassed by her praise. Shoo. Lower your voice. Don't let anyone recognize me. As he said that, he desperately pulled the brim of his hat down to cover his face, and then he pretended to be modest. Don't praise me anymore. If you continue to brag, I'll be in heaven. Brag? Tang Ying turned around and looked at him with a playful look. You're not serious, kid. Chen Guang felt wronged. I'm very serious, okay? I know you're still thinking about the past. You're not serious when you get on the plane. You're still bragging? Going to heaven? You're still calling yourself serious? Have you no shame? Brag. As she said that, she deliberately pouted her lips and made a very meaningful gesture. Chen Guang. Sister Tang Ying's sudden burst of unorthodox ideas was a little sharp. Okay, I'll stop joking with you. If it wasn't for the fact that we're in economy class and there are people next to us, I really didn't intend to let you off. I'm a professional medical researcher, and I'm actually left in the dust by a half-baked person like you in terms of knowledge. I really can't accept this. Don't worry. Wait for me to collect more samples from you and decipher your genetic code. In the future, all of humanity will remember my contribution. Who knows? Maybe you're hiding the secret to the next stage of human evolution. If I achieve my goal, I could be even greater than Darwin. Tang Ying, who was sitting near the aisle, whispered into Chen Guang's ear on her right. Chen Guang had a very unique feeling. She was clearly talking about a very great and noble goal, but his heart was in turmoil, as if it was being scratched by a cat's paw. Okay, then I, as a lab rat, will have to risk my life to accompany you. Chen Guang didn't want to be someone else's lab rat, but if it was Tang Ying, then he didn't mind. Everyone was so familiar with each other. They met when they were down. Their relationship was extraordinary, and Tang Ying's sample collection process was so... Oh yeah, one more thing. Sister Tang Ying, how much is the initial investment for your research institute? Will Gokyo University and Moorlands each pay half? Chen Guang asked as they whispered to each other. Tang Ying stomped her feet in anger. Stop it. I'm angry when you mention it. My saliva is almost dry. No matter what I say, I made it very clear that if you want to build a biomedical laboratory of a sufficient level, just the purchase of the most basic equipment and instruments will cost at least $50 million. This does not include the other construction costs of purchasing land in the 5 capitals and the cost of manpower. Chen Guang scratched his head. It's just studying my genes. Is there a need for such a big deal? Tang Ying. In genomics, there's not much difference between studying a person and studying a pig. I think you're scolding me. You can think whatever you want. If it's just a human genomics experiment, the workload won't be too big, but you're too different from ordinary people. I think it's very likely that more than 10% of your genes will have to be remeasured. That's not a big workload, right? A person has 3 billion base pairs. That's not a big workload. Okay, it's a lot. That's why I'm very angry. My alma mater, Moorlands at Gokyo University, are too stingy. It's not a problem for them to provide manpower, but when it comes to money, they're all misers. They can't even give me $20 million. Then why don't you provide your own money? Tang Ying shrugged. Do you think I didn't ask Xiao, Kai, and my dad? They don't agree. They all know that genomics is actually doing public welfare for humanity. It's purely a waste of money. They look like they care more about money than their lives. They're all businessmen. How can you talk about your father and brother like that? Aren't they very generous to me? That's because investing in you has a greater profit. Okay? Forget it. Anyway, let's leave it at that for now. $20 million. I'll reluctantly set up the framework. I'll take it one step at a time. However, Chen Guang smiled meaningfully. Sister Tang Ying, in my humble opinion, you've forgotten a very important thing. What? The person sitting next to you is probably the #1 nouveau riche of this year. He's lacking in everything now, but he's not lacking in money. Tang Ying's eyes gradually lit up. Hey, why didn't I think of that earlier? Chen Guang continued to chuckle. 50 million US dollars? What is this? It's not that I'm bragging, but I can even take out 500 million now. He really wasn't joking. Although the cost of coming to America was not small, the income was even higher. The box office of the movie, the development of Romeo and Juliet, and the crazily selling World's Pie were all living old hens that could lay golden eggs. While the two were chatting happily, they were puzzled as to why the plane was still not taking off. Suddenly, there was a commotion in the aisle. Tang Ying straightened her head and craned her neck to look behind her. What's going on? Standing in the aisle were two burly male airport staff. The two of them walked along the rows of seats and raised their heads to meet Tang Ying's gaze. Then, the two men's eyes lit up. They stopped counting and walked over with large strides. One of the burly black men said loudly in a low, muffled voice, "This Chinese lady, and this Chinese man next to you, please leave the plane." The white man next to him added, "Sorry, our tickets are oversold." Tang Ying was stunned. She had been flying for so many years and had encountered situations where she couldn't board a plane because of oversold tickets. But that had never happened to her before. Besides, if it was really oversold, she wouldn't even be able to get a boarding pass. She had never heard of an oversold ticket when the person was already on the plane. Bullsh ***. Chapter 1129. It was not until the two men walked along the aisle and stood in front of Tang Ying and stared down at her from above that Tang Ying was convinced that such a strange thing had really happened to her. But she still could not accept it. She raised her head and pointed at her face. "Are you talking about me? Oversold? You want us to get off the plane?" Tang Ying turned to look at Chen Guang beside her. She felt an indescribable pain in her balls. Did he forget about being demoted from first class to economy class? In any case, he could fly back to China. At most, he would complain about American Airlines' rudeness and contempt for its customers in his circle of friends when he got back. But now even economy class was gone. She could only say that she had run into trouble. She had to attend a meeting at the city hospital tomorrow morning and hand over the last of her work. In the afternoon, she had to attend a meeting with the leaders of Gokyo University School of Medicine, Dachuan's Department of Science and Technology, China's Ministry of Science and Technology, and the leaders of the Ministry of Education would all attend the meeting to discuss the specific details of investing in the establishment of a national biomedical laboratory. If she could not get on the plane this afternoon, then tomorrow's meeting would be over. This pigeon had been placed too far, and the joke had been made too big. Chen Guang was about to get up when Tang Ying pressed his shoulder down. "Don't say anything. I want to see what American Airlines is planning to do today." Tang Ying did not want Chen Guang to step in. The reason was simple. She was already furious when she was demoted. Chen Guang had comforted her and forced her to tolerate it. Now that American Airlines was here to cause trouble again, she could not tolerate it. Tang Ying felt that with Chen Guang's current fame and reputation, especially after knowing his status in the civil aviation industry, if Chen Guang showed his face, these guys who had been disgusting her would immediately bow and apologize. When that time came, one would not hide a smiling face. It would not be good to scold them. In addition, the furious Tang Ying was also curious as to what kind of interesting explanation the people from Meizhong Airlines could give to get her to descend and then kick her off the plane within a day. The two sturdy staff members looked curiously at Chen Guang, who was sitting next to them with a cap covering his face. According to the information, these two passengers did not book their seats at the same time. It seemed like they knew each other. Forget it, that's not important. A special ticket and a compensation ticket for lowering the cabin. They're not important people, so it doesn't matter whether I know them or not. Tang Ying stood up abruptly. "You have to give me an explanation. I originally bought a first-class ticket, but you guys downgraded it to economy class. I can't be bothered to bicker with you. But as far as I know, you can't even get a boarding pass with an oversold ticket. This is not oversold at all." Faced with Tang Ying's rage, the Caucasian worker's expression didn't change. "Miss from China, please calm down and cooperate with us. This was indeed overselling tickets. Please leave the plane immediately. Your emotions are out of control, and we can consider you as a threat to aviation safety. If necessary, we will take measures to force you off the plane." Impossible. I don't accept your reason. Tang Ying rebutted him right away. I don't even accept your reason for overselling tickets. And you want me to get off the plane? What about my meeting tomorrow? How am I going to explain myself? Seeing this, another black staff member pretended to take out a book from the side and flip through the information on it. Madam Tang, on behalf of American Airlines, I am officially notifying you to depart from flight MZ-878 immediately. We are deeply sorry for the trouble our company has caused you by overselling tickets. However, please cooperate with us. Also, the man next to you, in short, please leave the plane immediately. After that, he closed the book again, representing American Airlines to issue an official notice to Chen Guang and Tang Ying. However, there was one thing that was strange. The information in his hand did not show Chen Guang's name. He thought it was a mistake on the part of his colleague, but it didn't matter. How could they have known that Chen Guang's so-called special ticket was not a special price, but a free one? It was just that when Chen Guang took the initiative to descend, for the sake of confidentiality, the safety committee had set it as a special ticket for him. Of course, Tang Ying couldn't agree to it. Impossible. You, Mei Zhonghang, have gone too far. Get your manager here. Get your person in charge here. There are so many passengers on the plane. Why must it be us? The white worker took a step forward. Miss Tang, you'd better control yourself on the plane. We can compensate each of you with $400. That's not a small amount for you Chinese. At this time, someone interrupted, stop compensating. I only compensated you like this once last year. $400? It's 8 $50 coupons, and you can only use one each time you buy a ticket. Plus, it expires after a year. What's $400? With Tang Ying's net worth, she wouldn't even bat an eye if $4,000 was placed in front of her, let alone 8 ridiculous coupons. Impossible. I won't accept your compensation. Whoever wants it can go. We're not getting off the plane anyway. Tang Ying waved her hand and firmly refused. The faces of the two staff members gradually darkened. The white man clenched his fists tightly. Tang Ying wasn't afraid at all. Chen Guang was right behind her. Tang Ying knew how capable this kid was. She was sure that if this white man dared to throw a punch, he would be the one flying. The black worker pulled his colleague back a little. Miss Tang, I'll remind you for the last time. If you don't cooperate with us, you will be listed as an unwelcome guest by American Airlines. In addition, we will also submit your name to the Aviation Association. Also, as a Chinese national, you will be restricted from entering the country. Do you understand what I mean? I'm afraid you won't be able to come to America in the future. The white worker also suppressed his anger. That's right. Also, there are indeed many passengers in the cabin. We're very sorry about the overbooking, but the selection of passengers will be randomly selected by our system. Everyone can be selected. This is very fair for all passengers. You see, we need a total of 4 passengers to get off the plane. Apart from the 2 of you, there are 2 more passengers. At this time, the other passengers on the plane seemed to be a little impatient. They all began to chime in one after another. That's right. The airline company won't mess around. Hurry up and get off the plane. Don't waste everyone's time. It's all your own bad luck. You guys were selected. What else is there to say? If I was the one who was selected, we would have left the plane on our own. This is a plane, not a car at home. It's every passenger's duty to abide by the airline's rules. Most of the people who were making sarcastic remarks were seemingly warm-hearted, but in fact, they were very selfish international friends. There were also some Chinese people on the plane, but they didn't say much. Seeing their compatriots in trouble, they were also quite unhappy. There are 2 more people, randomly selected? Tang Ying frowned. She didn't believe the explanation of the 2 workers at all. She and Chen Guang booked their tickets separately. Moreover, Chen Guang had just descended from the cabin. In the end, they were picked out together. If it was purely random, it would be a small event with a probability of 1% multiplied by 1%. One could win 5 million in the lottery. The white worker nodded coldly. Of course it's random. It's very fair. After that, he stretched his neck and shouted, Mr. Tao in seat D of the 9th row, Ms. Luo in seat E, please cooperate. Due to overbooking, you also need to leave the plane. Then he turned to look at Tang Ying. Ms. Tang, as you can see, there are a total of 4 passengers. They have been selected fairly and fairly by our American airline system. Now, I'm issuing a final ultimatum. You must leave flight MZ-878 immediately. Otherwise, we will take forced relocation measures. Your immature behavior is very troubling to us. Tang almost laughed out loud. She was stunned. There were more than 200 passengers in the cabin, and less than a fifth of them were Asian. Was there something wrong with the machine? Just from the names, it was obvious that the other 2 unlucky people were also Chinese. All 4 of them were randomly selected. This guy was actually bragging about how fair and open their system was without batting an eyelid. Chen Guang, who was sitting next to her, was also stunned. He had always thought that the thickness of his skin could be ranked in the top 10 in the world. Now, he realized how naive he was. There was always someone better than him out there. One could not underestimate the heroes of the world. When it came to shamelessness, international friends were the strongest in this aspect. This is impossible. I want to contact my lawyer. Don't try to fool me with your overbooking and random system. Dream on. On the other side, the black staff was approaching the other 2 overbooked passengers, but Tang Ying slumped down. The white worker looked down at Tang Ying coldly. He was not in a hurry to make a move. Instead, he sneered and turned his head to walk further inside. On the other side, the 2 passengers who were also overbooked started arguing. Obviously, only white and black people would believe in the so-called fairness of the American airline system. No one was willing to be refused. It seems that our work today is not going well. Both groups of people refused to get off the plane. The 2 workers could not help but be particularly angry. I'll give you 5 more minutes to think about it. After that, you'll be relocated. Whether you accept it or not, Pierce, let's go. The white man waved his hand. He was not in a hurry to make a move. Now you know what they're trying to do, right? Chen Guang quietly adjusted his hat. If you had asked me to step in earlier, this wouldn't have happened. Tang Ying was still angry. It's fine. It's the same even if you step in now. Chen Guang shook his head. I just looked it up online and found something very interesting. What is it? Chinese people have been overbooked for many years. You know what I mean? Chen Guang lowered his hat and grinned. If I didn't know about it, it would have been fine. But since I've seen it, I feel that since I've become quite famous in America recently, I might as well make a bigger deal out of it. Tang Ying asked, You want to do something for the Chinese people? Chen Guang shrugged. I'm not that great. It's just one thing. How much can I do? It's nothing more than to make them suffer a little, lest they think that yellow people are easy to bully. They've pissed us off, and we don't like them either. Let's teach them a lesson. As he spoke, Chen Guang took out a pair of sunglasses and a mask from his bag and put them on his face. Things might get out of hand later. You don't have to step in. I'll do it. Chen Guang did not intend to make a big deal out of it. He thought that he could settle the whole thing with a phone call. Regardless of whether American Airlines was really overbooked or whether they really had to disembark the plane, if Chen Guang called the International Civil Aviation Association, there was no way they could not even get a seat. Even if someone really had to disembark the plane, it would not be him and Tang Ying. However, it happened right in front of him. The so-called fair and impartial random selection turned out to be people with the same skin color as him. He could not tolerate that. Chen Guang thought about the hardships he had faced since he came to America. Just because he was from China and was Chinese, how much resistance did he have to face from the start? If it were not for his nationality, if it were not for the fact that he was from China, how could the process of getting an Oscar be so difficult? Perhaps he would have been recognized by the world long ago if he had not even used half of what he had done. Although the compensation offered by President Fred and the others was impressive, it was still Chen Guang's ability that had thoroughly convinced them. Chen Guang's performance was simply too perfect to the point of being impeccable. However, before that, their resistance and rejection had made Chen Guang's life very difficult. If Chen Guang's abilities were just a little bit weaker, if he showed even the slightest flaw to others, it was very likely that his Oscar would go down the drain. At the end of the day, it was still because the Huaxia people lacked the right to speak in America or even in the world. They were not valued and trusted. Even other colored people might not be able to compare. Talking about today's oversale, it was even more obvious. American Airlines was clearly targeting Asians, especially the Huaxia people. Especially now, there were still cold remarks coming from all directions. Most of them were saying that the Huaxia people did not follow the rules, were barbaric, and were wasting everyone's time. Chen Guang only sneered in his heart. Whatever you say, don't even think about flying today. Sai, since you want to do something big, then we probably can't fly today, right? Too bad my meeting tomorrow. Chen Guang comforted him. It's okay, we can fly today. I promise you'll be able to step on our country's soil before 9 tomorrow morning. Okay? That's not possible, right? Chen Guang shrugged. American Airlines isn't the only company that flies to Wujing. We'll pay for a jet from another company. It'll be the same. Chen Guang? Tang Ying number 1. Let's stop flattering each other. Yo, you're back again, and you even got help. As Tang Ying spoke, he looked up and saw a large group of people walking in from the aisle. In addition to the two guys, just now, there were several uniformed people with guns. The staff of American Airlines directly called the airport police. It seemed that they were really going to take the so-called forced relocation measures. Passengers, please exercise restraint and do not record. Now, we will begin to take coercive measures against illegal passengers who do not cooperate. The Caucasian staff was more confident because he had someone behind him. He took the lead and spoke loudly. After he finished speaking, he picked up the walkie-talkie and said, Mr. Schultz, I'm starting here. Good, you've done a great job. We should teach these uncooperative, immature, and irrational passengers a lesson. Schultz, the general manager of American Airlines, who was in charge of Los Angeles airport affairs, said so. This young second-generation heir had recently taken over American Airlines business in Los Angeles under the arrangement of his father, who was a senior executive of American Airlines. He was planning to do something to build prestige among the staff, and he felt that this was a good opportunity. Several tall and strong police officers approached quickly, and many passengers who were watching the fun raised their phones. Not many people were so obedient as to stop recording just like that. Chen Guang finally stood up and moved away from Tang Ying to stand in the aisle. He adjusted his sunglasses and adjusted his mask. I sincerely hope that after today, you will remember something. Chapter 11:30. The Caucasian officer felt that something was wrong. The Chinese woman, who seemed to be very difficult to deal with just now, was now sitting quietly in her chair. But the man in the cap, who had been silently pretending to be dead, suddenly stood up. What was even more strange was that the man was wearing sunglasses and a mask, as if he couldn't see the light of day and was acting sneakily. It's ridiculous. Pretending to be a star, as if he's afraid of being recognized. What do you think you are? Maybe you're really a big shot in China, or maybe you're really famous, but this is the United States. No one will give you any face. The man didn't think that Chen Guang was a dangerous person. Although he still couldn't see Chen Guang's name, the passenger's information backup had been stamped by the National Security Committee. However, the airport's police officers didn't share the same thoughts. After all, Chen Guang didn't even dare to show his face to the police on the plane. In addition to the recent tense international situation, they were on full alert when they saw Chen Guang. Tang Ying didn't say anything else, but looked at Chen Guang's profile with great interest. She wanted to know how Chen Guang was going to make a big deal out of this. Chen Guang didn't have any particularly clever ideas. He just relied on the cap, sunglasses, and mask, and used the simplest and most violent way of pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Seeing them getting closer, Chen Guang didn't rush to make a move. He liked to be polite before resorting to force, so he had a good reason to do so. If you keep control, I'll be easy to talk to. If you pretend, I'll be better at it. The Caucasian officer was walking forward, but was suddenly pulled back by the airport police officer behind him. What's the matter? Officer Jack. The Caucasian officer turned around and asked, Nelson, are you sure this Chinese man's name is unknown on the passenger's information? Nelson nodded. I'm sure. I just confirmed it with Mr. Schultz. Officer Jack's eyebrows gradually furrowed. This is very strange. Now, I suspect that they may be terrorists. Mr. Schultz is the person in charge of your company in Los Angeles. Unless he's a special agent or official from the Department of Homeland Security, He won't be able to find his name before the flight, but this guy is Chinese. Nielsen's eyes lit up. He was indeed a smart police officer, specially sent by Mr. Schultz to cooperate with him. If Nielsen still treated the man as an ordinary passenger, he would not be able to use some more extreme means. But if he labeled the man as a terrorist, he would suffer a lot. That's right, Officer Jack. When we were talking to them just now, this man behaved very strangely from beginning to end. He had been lowering the brim of his hat, as if he was afraid of being recognized by us. He was very suspicious. Also, his ticket information shows that it's a special fare ticket. Agents and officials won't buy a special fare ticket. They're all in first class. Pierce, the black man beside him, decisively dealt the finishing blow. Officer Jack nodded. All right, I know what to do. But later, don't show any obvious abnormalities. We're professionals, and we'll handle it. Look at the back of his hand. The blood vessels are bulging as if they're going to explode. Although he doesn't look strong, in my experience, people with this kind of physique have amazing explosive power. It's impossible to have this kind of physique without professional training. Jack was indeed a very professional and keen police officer. Ordinary people really couldn't see the threat of Chen Guang. The few of them were whispering from afar, thinking that no one could hear them. However, they never expected that Chen Guang had pricked up his ears and could hear every single word of theirs. It seemed that not only the international friends of American Airlines were not very kind, but the Los Angeles police seemed to be even more crazy. He hadn't done anything yet, but they had already put a big hat on him. After the discussion, these people continued to come here until they stood in front of Chen Guang. With his keen senses, Chen Guang noticed that the airport's police officers must be communicating with each other through some hand signals. They seemed to be standing casually, but they were positioned at an ingenious angle, hiding the guns on their waists on the other side of their bodies. The atmosphere on the scene seemed calm, but in fact, undercurrents were surging. Chen Guang's eyes narrowed slightly. It seemed that these people weren't just simply putting a hat on him. They really thought that he was a terrorist? Was that necessary? You were using the excuse of overbooking, but in fact, you were violating the rules to kick innocent passengers off the plane. You were deliberately targeting the Chinese and discriminating against me and my countrymen, but you pretended to say that it was a fair and random draw. Now, I didn't even say a word, and you put a big hat on me. Do you really want to go against the law? Get off the plane, sir. And Ms. Tang next to you, this is really the last time I'm warning you. You can still book your tickets for tomorrow. This is just a trivial matter. You don't have to pay a huge price for it. Nelson, who was standing behind Officer Jack, tilted his head and said loudly, letting out a cough. Chen Guang replied through his mask, "This is the first time I'm replying to you, and it will also be the last time. We won't accept your explanation of overbooking and random selection, and I'm no longer interested in taking your plane. However, this matter won't end so easily. You think it's a trivial matter? You're telling me that it's a trivial matter to randomly select 4 Chinese people to kick off passengers who have already boarded the plane? Then what else is a trivial matter for the aviation industry? What? Are you threatening us? Can you say it again?" Officer Jack quietly put his hand behind his back and put his finger on his gun. He thought silently. Is it a serious matter for the aviation industry? Apart from the air crash, it's probably a hijacking. Officer Jack's first impression of Chen Guang was the strongest. Now he inevitably extended the serious matter, in Chen Guang's words, to the hijacking of the plane. He was also shocked. He had never seen such an unscrupulous and crazy extremist. Not only was he not afraid in front of the police, but he even took the initiative to threaten them. Officer Jack felt that this person must be an extremist whose faith was beyond a certain level. He was the backbone of the organization and extremely dangerous. As for Chen Guang, the situation in front of him reminded him of a joke he often encountered when he was in countless fights since he was a child. Whenever someone said to someone, "If you have the guts, say it again," the other person would definitely say it again. The other person would definitely say something, and what was originally a trifling matter would immediately develop into a fist fight. The one who lost in a one-on-one fight would definitely call for help, and the other side wouldn't just admit defeat. That was how countless big and small group fights in the county came about. It was very likely that the earliest reason was that two kids accidentally bumped into each other while buying ice cream at the canteen. Eventually, it developed into a fight between two big gangs in the county. Chen Guang named it, say it again. Once this law was triggered, he couldn't back down. Therefore, his eyes behind the sunglasses narrowed even more. Do you think I'm threatening you? Today's incident was caused by Mei Zhonghong's evil act of flouting the rules. Are you guys stupid? Or do you think everyone is as stupid as you? Do you think we don't know? The so-called overbooking, isn't it when your airline employees want to board the plane? Do you really think we don't know anything? When I was flying the plane, you guys didn't even know where you were. I didn't expose you just because we don't want to talk nonsense with you. Also, not everyone's time is as cheap as yours. Do you know how much loss we'll suffer if we delay our return by one day? If we really suffer heavy losses because of your unreasonable actions today, Mei Zhonghong can't escape the responsibility. Officer Jack, don't talk nonsense with him. Do it. There's less than 2 minutes before the departure time. The black man, Pierce, shouted from behind. Officer Jack's eyes flickered, and the other two police officers standing beside him reached out their hands to grab Chen Guang's arm. As for Officer Jack himself, he still had his body turned sideways, but his fist was already raised, aiming directly at Chen Guang's face. Either do not make a move, or do it ruthlessly. This was the American police's routine when dealing with suspected extremists, to prevent all dangers before they happen. However, Chen Guang's expression did not change. He reached out his hand and slapped away the two men's hands. You guys started it first, so don't blame me for what happens next. Two loud bangs were heard, and the two police officers who reached out to grab Chen Guang's fists were slapped away as they screamed in pain. On the other side, before Chen Guang's voice died away, his hand that was still stretched out grabbed Officer Jack's fist, twisted it, and pushed it backward. Officer Jack fell on his back and crashed into the white man, Nelson, behind him. I'm the one you bumped into today, so you can't take advantage of me. If it were someone else, wouldn't they be in big trouble? Chen Guang was still standing in the middle of the aisle, his expression unchanged. Officer Jack had just stood up and finally pulled out his gun, pointing it at Chen Guang. Put your hands up, you terrorist, or I'll shoot. Looking at the black muzzle in front of him, Chen Guang did not feel threatened at all. He was just annoyed. He was just taking a plane. Why did he have to cause so much trouble? Do you think I'm Hello Kitty if I don't show my power? Why don't you try shooting? As he spoke, he took a step forward toward the muzzle. Officer Jack saw this and quickly retreated. He was afraid that Chen Guang would take the gun, and he did not expect this mysterious man to be so arrogant in front of a gun. Even Tang Ying, who was behind him, became nervous and stood up abruptly. Chen Guang, don't be too impulsive, she shouted in Chinese, but Chen Guang made an okay gesture without turning his head and said, It's okay, their toy guns can't hurt me. Chen Guang did not believe that the other party would really shoot. Although he had heard that the American police were very overbearing, there should be a limit to how overbearing they could be, right? Chapter 1131. Nelson, who was at the back of the crowd, was shocked when he saw that Officer Jack's gun was useless. At the same time, he picked up the walkie-talkie and shouted, Mr. Schultz, this Chinese is very powerful. He has undergone special training and is dangerous. The situation in the plane is getting out of control. Schultz, who was watching TV in the airport office with his legs crossed, suddenly sat up straight. He was a little unhappy. It was just a temporary vacation for 4 American Airlines employees to travel to China, but they had caused so much trouble. Schultz blamed Nelson in his heart for not doing his job well. On the other hand, he was secretly happy. The more extreme the other party was, the more forceful measures he could take. If he could let his crew discover a real terrorist, his position in American Airlines would immediately be greatly consolidated. As for whether that person was really an extremist, was it important? Wasn't it always the airline that had the final say on these things? If I say you are, you are. Nelson, tell Officer Jack not to worry about anything. If anything happens, we, American Airlines, will take full responsibility. Schultz, will take full responsibility. Nelson, who was white, followed behind Officer Jack and conveyed Schultz's message. Officer Jack nodded calmly, still pointing his gun at Guang. The other officers did the same and took out their weapons. As for the other passengers on the plane, they covered their heads and hid behind their seats when they saw that the situation was not good. Guns were legal in many states in the United States. Many people had one at home, so they were not too surprised by this. Some of the bolder ones hid behind their seats, but they still stuck their phones out from the back and pointed it at Guang's direction. Mr. Tao and his wife, Ms. Luo, reacted the same as the others. It was supposed to be an ordinary oversold, but the moment the airport police pulled out their guns, things changed. I'm warning you for the last time. Chinese man, put your hands up, or I'll shoot. Who are you? Why can't I see your name in the passenger file? After getting Schultz's guarantee from Nelson, Officer Jack was relieved. No matter how big the situation was, Schultz, whose father was a senior executive of American Airlines, should be able to control the situation. Schultz's subtext was also very clear. If necessary, they could even kill this Chinese man on the spot. Jack spoke loudly as he unlocked the safety without batting an eyelid. How could Guang raise his hands? Things had escalated to this point, and he was already being pointed at with a gun. It was time to take off his cap, sunglasses, and mask to let these ignorant and arrogant people know who he was. To be honest, pretending to be weak was not that great. It was a pity that a small matter had escalated to this point. Although he didn't suffer any substantial damage, his mood was still a little unhappy. Regardless of whether the gun was a threat or not, no matter who it was that was pointing it at them, they would not be happy. However, Guang did not feel that his actions were meaningless. After all, he had to blow this matter up and make use of the influence of this matter to make American Airlines pay a painful price. It was akin to killing the chicken to warn the monkey. However, Guang did not think that what he did was meaningless. He had to make a big deal out of this and use the influence of this incident to make American Airlines pay a heavy price. This was only one of the aspects, but being able to see the big picture from the small would have a considerable degree of positive help in improving the status of the Chinese people in the world. Now that he had the ability and status in the Jianghu, he should spare no effort to do more for his countrymen. Although his ultimate principle was to treat people of all skin colors fairly, the Chinese were the ones suffering in Europe and America. It was never wrong to help one's own people first. If the Chinese, who had a higher social status, more power, and more ability, did not fight for the rights of the people in their own country, how could a nation be more respected in the world? Just like in the past, the people in America could not afford to offend were black people. However, black rappers could even release songs to teach others how to rob the easiest Chinese. Guang felt that although the strategy he adopted today might be too extreme, it was also the best strategy that could achieve the best results. He did not regret it. I'm really curious to see the expressions of the three guys, Nelson, Pierce, and Jack, when they see my true face. Whether it was his reputation in the civil aviation industry or his recent fame in America through women and Romeo and Juliet, Guang did not believe that the people on the plane would not recognize him. All right, looks like there's no other way. Guang shrugged, then reached for his sunglasses. Officer Jack was shocked. What are you doing? Stop. He was really nervous. Guang's hand was suspended in midair. I'm going to take off my sunglasses and mask. Don't you want to know who I am? Unexpectedly, Officer Jack said again, we don't need to know who you are now. You just need to raise your hands immediately. Hearing those words, Guang fell into silence. With so many people watching and so many cameras around, Guang's gun was a toy in his eyes. He couldn't afford to lose face like this. He could not raise his hands, absolutely could not. Guang did not care about him, but still reached for his sunglasses. At this moment, a male flight attendant who had quietly sneaked behind Guang suddenly pounced on him from behind and punched at the back of Guang's head. The sound of wind came from behind. Guang's ears twitched, and he knew what was happening behind him. He bent his waist and avoided the guy's sneak attack with his head. Then, Chun Guang bent his right leg from behind, and with a golden hook fishing for the moon, he kicked the male flight attendant's abdomen from the bottom up. "What are you doing? Don't mess around." Officer Jack did not expect that the male flight attendant would be so bold to sneak attack Chun Guang, and he shouted. Just now, Chun Guang's simple movement repelled the three of them in an instant. Officer Jack knew that it was impossible to subdue this mysterious man with ordinary close combat. Although he shouted so, he still held the gun in his hands and pointed it straight ahead. However, because Chun Guang had already attached himself to the body, Officer Jack's muzzle was now pointed at the male flight attendant behind Chun Guang. Bang! At this critical moment, the Glock 18 in Officer Jack's hand, which had been in service for more than 10 years, accidentally discharged. After he opened the safety, he did not pull the trigger, but directly fired. The loud sound rang through the cabin, and the timid female passenger screamed. The two staff members, Nelson and Pierce, trembled fiercely and subconsciously wanted to hide to the side. As for Officer Jack himself and the other airport police officers behind him, their minds went blank for a short while. Officer Jack's heart was like dead ashes. In fact, he did not really want to shoot. At least, before this Huaxia man showed further aggressive behavior, he could not easily shoot. But he did not expect that the Glock, which was famous for its stability, would accidentally discharge at this time. What was more unfortunate was that he did not aim at this Huaxia man, who was suspected to be an extremist, but at the chest of another male flight attendant who rashly attacked. He raised his head in despair and looked straight ahead. He thought he would see a scene of blood splattering. With the power of the Glock, a thumb-sized bloody hole should appear in the chest of the flight attendant at such a close range. But this scene did not happen. He only saw two fingers. Between these two fingers was the bullet that had just been accidentally discharged from the Glock. Smoke was still rising from the bullet. The fingers were clamped so tightly that the eggshell of the bullet was completely deformed, becoming the shape of an hourglass. The male flight attendant was completely scared, and he also stared at the scene in front of him. His eyes were also focused on the two fingers clamping the bullet. The few of them looked down again. The owner of the two fingers was bent over in a very twisted posture. His right hand was raised from behind his back, and the bullet was caught between the index and middle fingers of his right hand. Chun Guang stood up straight, raised his right hand in front of him, and then took off his sunglasses with his left hand. At the same time, he tore off his mask, exposed his face, and blew the smoke on it. He grinned and then sighed. Damn, I'm convinced. You really dare to shoot. I'm convinced. Chapter 11:32. Jack, Nelson, and Pierce stared at Chun Guang's face blankly. The air in the cabin was stagnant for a moment, but after the loud gunshot, it became so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Their pupils contracted, and their mouths opened wider and wider. Although Chun Guang was not known by everyone in the United States, almost everyone in the civil aviation industry in Los Angeles knew him. His posters were still hanging on countless downtown streets in Los Angeles, and even the billboards outside the airport halls had his face on them. Jack and the other officers had even gone to the cinema with their families on vacation yesterday, contributing to the box office of Women. In addition, the personal stories of the winners of the Hero Medal, as well as the improved pilot's operation manual compiled by Chun Guang himself, were still compulsory courses for every civil aviation staff. Not long ago, after the big shots of the civil aviation industry attended the premiere of Chun Guang's movie, the civil aviation industry launched a new round of learning activities in the company to coordinate with the release of Women and to help Chun Guang promote the movie. The so-called learning activities, on the one hand, emphasize the importance of the new operation manual, and on the other hand, emphasized Chun Guang's contributions to the aviation industry and hoped that the employees would take the initiative to support the real hero of the aviation industry in their spare time. At this moment, Jack was still holding his Glock, and the situation was very awkward and stiff. Mr. Right? Mr. Chun? Jack swallowed his saliva and asked in a trembling voice. After a brief moment of confusion, Nelson and Pierce began to step back silently. Oh no, this time was really terrible. They randomly picked two Huaxia people and thought they were easy to bully, so they tried to oversell their cars, but they ended up bumping into the hero of the aviation industry, Chen Guang. Unfortunately, they didn't understand the Huaxia language, or they would have shouted, "The flood has broken the temple of the Dragon King." "Mr. Chen, I'm sorry. We didn't expect it to be you." Nelson braced himself to stand out and apologize. No wonder he couldn't find any information on Chen Guang before. No wonder the security committee gave him a super-secret identification stamp. This had nothing to do with whether or not the extremists were hiding their identities. It was simply because the level of the Hero Medal recipient, Chen Guang, was too high. It wasn't something that he, or even Mr. Schultz, could easily access. Thinking of his and Pierce's previous attitude towards Chen Guang and the fact that Jack pointed a gun at Chen Guang, Nelson carefully looked at Chen Guang's expression. He always felt that things might develop in an irreversible direction. If they were dealing with ordinary people, the powerful Aviation Association wouldn't be afraid of anyone, even if it was Warren Buffett or Bill Gates, although the probability of that happening was not high. But Nielsen knew that the Aviation Association would not easily bow down to anyone. They would even unite to become the strong support of American Airlines. But this time, in a sense, they were on the same side as the Aviation Association. They were the hero medal holders who had countless fans within the association and were highly respected by many of the association's powerful people. The hero medal was a very high honor, even more noble than the Oscars in the film industry and the Hall of Fame in the NBA. It's over, it's all over. Chen Guang first glared at Jack. "Do you still want to point a gun at me? What? Do you want misfire again?" Jack and the others hurried to clean up. The frightened male flight attendant behind Chen Guang said in an incredulous tone, "I'm still alive?" "That's right, you're still alive." Chen Guang turned around. The male flight attendant first looked up at Chen Guang for a few seconds and then quickly reacted like everyone else. My God. Chen, don't talk nonsense. Get out of the way. You make me very unhappy. I'm afraid you may die if I punch you." At this time, Chen Guang was full of anger. Obviously, he would not be so easy to talk to. Although these people's attitude changed 180 degrees after being recognized, it did not help. He had been provoked, and it would not be so easy to deal with it. Then he looked back at Jack and Nelson and the others. "Come on, it's already like this. I don't care what you think of this matter today, but your rude behavior has greatly troubled me. As I said just now, I will not let it go. If you are afraid of my revenge, Jack, why don't you try to shoot me again? Let's see if you can kill me." Jack shook his head violently. "How is this possible? I know it's you, Mr. Chen. How can I?" Slap. Before he finished his words, Chen Guang slapped him hard in the face. "So if it's not me, but another Huaxiao person, you can shoot at will because of your inexplicable speculation? Can we Huaxiao people be slaughtered on the land of the United States? I have a lot to say, but I'm not interested in talking nonsense with you now. Let's talk in court." After Chen Guang finished speaking, he got up and looked at the other passengers on the plane indifferently. At this time, he looked around and saw cell phone cameras everywhere. Someone had probably sent the video out, but he didn't care. He shrugged. "Just now, when we were about to be forcibly relocated, no one in your oily land was willing to stand up for us. Now, I can only apologize. Before this matter is resolved, Flight MZ-878 won't be able to take off smoothly. Congratulations, you're all overbooked." That's right, everyone on this plane is overbooked. When Chen Guang mentioned the word oversold, he intentionally emphasized on his tone to make it seem like he was mocking Su Tao. Nelson's face changed dramatically. Of course, he understood what Chen Guang said. The idea of dealing with this matter privately in his mind was instantly dispelled. After that, Chen Guang no longer paid any attention to them and sat back down before he gave a call to China Airlines. 2 minutes later, he nodded with satisfaction. His own people were awesome. He got a private plane that belonged to him and could take off at any time. Officer Jack, who had been observing him and did not dare to leave, was a little relieved. Since Chen Guang had the intention to leave, it seemed that this matter could be over. But immediately Chen Guang made another call in front of them. This time, he called Pizarro of Baker Law Firm. This was the territory of foreigners. Although Chun Guang wanted to make trouble, he did not intend to completely break the rules. Mr. Pizarro, that's all about the oversold matter. But I have another situation. As a lawful citizen who abides by the law, I was pointed at my head with a gun, and the gun was fired, almost killing me. How can I sue the other party in this situation? However, Chun Guang's words to Pizarro nearly made Nelson and the rest want to bang their heads against the wall. As for the person in charge, Schultz, who had just received the report, he was not much better at this time. As soon as all the ordinary passengers left, Schultz stumbled over. On the other side, the videos taken by many people had been posted on the internet with various titles from different angles. Chun Guang, the world's first performing artist, the world's first XX, and the winner of the Global Civil Aviation Hero Medal, encountered the so-called oversold in Los Angeles and was pointed at his head by the Los Angeles Airport Police. Furthermore, the gun had actually fired. However, he was not injured, and the male flight attendant who tried to sneak attack him did not die, because he caught the bullet with his fingers. Every factor in this was enough to become a breaking point, especially the last one. It took less than 20 minutes for these videos to appear on the internet and sweep across the entire social network. Because of this, countless people felt that they were bound by a common enemy, and they began to complain tearfully about American Airlines, a company with a notorious track record. At the same time, there were more people who accused the Los Angeles Airport Police, who had obviously been bribed by violence. Of course, the most unacceptable scene was the scene where Chun Guang caught the bullet with 2 fingers. Although this kind of thing was as common as eating and drinking soup in the eyes of people in Huaxia who knew Chun Guang, it was simply unbelievable in the eyes of ordinary Americans. They even felt that this was a movie. But this was not a movie, it was the news that was happening in Los Angeles Airport. This was a reality, not a movie. The explosion of public opinion, in turn, caused great pressure on American Airlines. Schultz, who is directly responsible for this matter, was dismissed on the spot. Even his father, who is also a senior executive of American Airlines, could not save him. Apart from that, Schultz was also ordered to apologize to Chun Guang, and now he came here in grievance. Mr. Chun Schultz, who was about 1.8 meters tall and had a very strong body, stood in front of Chun Guang, but he was as shy as a child of a few years old. However, Chun Guang clearly heard the words he said through the walkie-talkie. Your name is Schultz, right? You said you can take full responsibility, right? Then why don't you take responsibility for me again? Come on, let me see how you plan to take responsibility for this matter. How does American Airlines plan to take responsibility for this matter? You must give me an explanation. If the person you met today was not me, but an ordinary Huaxia person, he should have died under your gun, right? Then what kind of title are you going to give to the deceased? Extremists? It was obvious that Chun Guang had no intention of negotiating with Schultz at all. After scolding this person, he asked him to leave. Just like what your American logic says, if an apology is useful, what's the point of having the police? When you ask someone to point a gun at me, you didn't expect to be struck by lightning instead of showing off, did you? Are you afraid now? Do you regret it? It's too late. Chun Guang glanced around and was very satisfied with the professionalism of the Baker law firm. In this brief lawyer's letter, American Airlines' bad attitude and illegal practices in this overselling incident were concisely and comprehensively explained in detail. The letter started from the authenticity of the overbooking to the reasonableness of forcing the passengers who had already boarded the plane to get off, and then to the so-called random drawing, which turned out to be 4 Chinese people. There might even be some under-the-table operation. The Baker law firm believed that American Airlines' behavior was suspected of racial discrimination. Moreover, after being opposed and boycotted by the passengers, the coercive measures taken by American Airlines and the Los Angeles Airport Police were also very problematic. They framed the important passengers who had been certified by the safety committee as extremists, pulled out a gun in public, and even fired. No matter what, they had fired. Now the bullet was still in the hands of the victim, Chen Guang. The evidence was conclusive and irrefutable. As Chen Guang waved his hand, Donder called the headquarters on the spot. Within 5 minutes at most, this lawyer's letter would appear in front of the senior management of American Airlines and the news media. What's more, Donder asked his assistant to take out a high-definition video camera from behind and directly record the video in the cabin in front of Chen Guang, preparing to use it as an online press conference. When Chen Guang contacted them before, he had made it very clear that he had to leave today, so he had no time to hold another press conference. However, it was just right to hold it here. The press conference only lasted for less than 10 minutes before Donder announced the end with a very meaningful smile. This matter will not end so easily. He was one of the best aviation litigation lawyers on the earth. This time, American Airlines and the Los Angeles Airport Police were completely unable to stand on their feet, so he could win the case without lying on the ground. According to the contract signed between the firm and Chen Guang, this kind of lawsuit was like lying on the ground and getting money. How could he not be happy? Nielsen and the others, who had been watching the scene in a daze, almost wanted to die. This time, they had really kicked an iron plate, and it was a very hard iron plate. He was just like an iron hedgehog. As soon as the video of the press conference was sent out, the CEO of American Airlines finally called Chen Guang. Mr. Chen, I've got the details. I apologize to you on behalf of American Airlines, and I'm willing to pay you a lot of compensation. Let's call it a day. What do you think? The CEO's attitude was quite sincere. Chen Guang grinned. You don't have to apologize to me personally because I don't intend to forgive you at all. There was a moment of silence on the other side of the phone. Obviously, the CEO didn't expect that Chen Guang would be so tough even though he was so sincere. So what do you want, Mr. Chen? Chen Guang thought for a moment and said, You don't have to apologize to me alone. You should apologize to all the Chinese people who are being discriminated against by your company or have been discriminated against in the past. You should also publicly promise that this kind of thing will never happen again. Of course, Meizhong Airlines will have to pay the compensation. Mr. Chen, I admit that you have made great contributions to the aviation industry, but don't you think you're asking too much? Don't you think you're being too aggressive? We will never apologize to any Chinese people for the overbooking incident. The interests of the employees in the aviation industry are above everything else. They put in a lot of hard work and should be respected. So you can take other people's seats at will? I don't care whether the employees or the customers are more important in your company's creed. What I care about most is that the so-called random selection results are all Chinese people. Besides, don't fool me with the ridiculous excuse of overbooking. I'm tired of hearing similar excuses today. You can only fool fools. You are discriminating against Chinese people, and this is the real reason why I don't accept your apology. Because you are completely wrong. Even now, you still don't realize where the real problem lies. Goodbye. After that, Chen Guang didn't give the CEO a chance to talk nonsense and immediately hung up the phone. Donder, the lawyer, gave Chen Guang a thumbs up. Well done, Mr. Chen. Your answer is great. It gives us the upper hand in the next lawsuit. Chen Guang shrugged. I didn't think about my answer carefully. It was just my most sincere thought. On the other side, in the office of American Airlines, the CEO was furious. On one hand, he accused the Schultz father and son of making trouble out of nothing and provoking people who shouldn't be provoked. On the other hand, he was angry because of Chen Guang's tough attitude. At the same time, many leading companies in the Aviation Industry Association called. Obviously, the video of the online press conference had been published on the internet. Everyone could see that Chen Guang planned to make a big deal out of this matter. Other companies couldn't help but sympathize with American Airlines, but they also felt that they deserved it. In the American aviation industry, employees of all companies had high status, but American Airlines was the most arrogant and unscrupulous. Their peers had already warned Mei Zhonghong, hoping that they would restrain themselves a little. However, Mei Zhonghong didn't take it seriously and continued to do as he pleased. He was even proud of it, so they could only say that they deserved it. Damn it, this is too much. The CEO hung up the sympathy phone call from others in the industry and turned around to see the public lawyer's letter and video press conference for Baker Law Firm on the internet. I won't give in so easily. 20 minutes later, he gave a public speech in the conference room of his company's headquarters. There weren't many media present, but for such a large company, it wasn't difficult to find some news mouthpieces. He made a clear statement to the public. Everything went according to Chun Guang's expectations. American Airlines refuted everything in the lawyer's letter. They refused to admit the truth about the oversale, nor did they admit that there was something fishy about the random selection. They only insisted that it was a small probability event, and it was just a coincidence. As for whether or not the law enforcement process was excessive, American Airlines didn't quibble because of the irrefutable witness and material evidence. They frankly admitted their mistake and expressed their willingness to publicly apologize and compensate to Chun Guang. But they firmly denied that there was any problem of illegal operation and discrimination in the whole incident. When Chun Guang and Tang Ying saw American Airlines reply, it was already 8 o'clock in the evening. At this moment, the two of them didn't sit in the cabin of MZ-878. Instead, they sat in the VIP lounge. Donder didn't leave. Instead, he stayed in this room with more assistants. They used this place as a temporary office. See, I knew it would be like this. Tang Ying couldn't help feeling a headache. This will become a protracted lawsuit. Even if you have the help of Baker Law Firm, it will definitely take a long time to collect evidence and argue in court. Discrimination is a very bad phenomenon. They won't admit it even if you beat them to death. Chun Guang smiled mysteriously. No, it's not troublesome at all. I can handle it today. Tang Ying was puzzled. Why? Chun Guang craned his neck and looked at the direction of the door in the distance. The two culprits, Nelson and Pierce, were still waiting awkwardly with Schultz. American Airlines wouldn't give up trying to reach an understanding with Chun Guang through these three people until the last moment. As for Jack and his colleagues, they were temporarily relieved of their duties and detained. What awaited them was another lawsuit. They were suspected of several crimes, such as duty-related crimes. Really, it's not troublesome at all. Chun Guang stood up. At the same time, he turned around and greeted Donder. Mr. Donder, please take your assistant and equipment. We're going to talk to Schultz, the head of American Airlines in Los Angeles. Donder was shocked. He thought Chun Guang was going to let go, which hurt him a lot. Mr. Chun, I don't recommend you to contact them again before the trial. There are many things to prepare in advance. To his surprise, Chun Guang shook his head. No need. Let's go and collect evidence now. It's very important. Chun Guang cast a meaningful glance at the haggard Schultz in the distance and licked his lips silently. My forced transaction. Well, it didn't cool down. But to make Schultz tell the truth, he didn't need to use such a high-level skill. Now he had a more energy-saving method. This was an inner strength technique that could search one's soul. It was one of the more than 400,000 martial arts techniques that he had mastered in the true martial land. He had integrated it into the true martial divine technique, but he could still use it. The name sounded domineering. Soul snatching technique. In the real world, it wouldn't be as domineering as it was in the realm of true martial. It could completely control a person's mind. In the past, it was so weak that it could be ignored. It might not even be as good as a low-end hypnosis. But now that the power of the Holy Grail on Earth was getting stronger, Chun Guang didn't need to cultivate in the martial sage realm. He could naturally recover his strength along with the increasing power of the Holy Grail. The reason wasn't complicated. Cultivation in the realm of true martial relied on yin and yang qi. The power of the Holy Grail in the real world was far more original than yin and yang qi. Now that Chun Guang used this method to deal with Schultz, it was perfect. Mr. Schultz wasn't a tenacious person. Since the incident in the afternoon, he had been in a state of panic. Now Chun Guang planned to pretend to negotiate with him to make him lower his guard. Then he would knock down his guard and use the mind skill of an internal force master. Mr. Schultz, let's have a talk. Together with Donder, Chun Guang stood in front of Schultz with a smile, looking like a weasel paying respects to a chicken. Chapter 1134. Schultz didn't know that Chun Guang was up to no good. Instead, he He was overjoyed. He felt that God had opened his eyes. Of course, he knew about the response from the headquarters. This was good news for him. Even though he had been fired, as long as he could get rid of the racial discrimination charge, it wouldn't affect his future. As for the truth about the overselling incident, that wasn't important. This was a well-known secret in the airline industry. American Airlines had been attacked more than once because of this incident, but it didn't cause much of a stir. In fact, in Schultz's eyes, Officer Jack's Glock misfiring wasn't a big deal. Even though everyone knew that Jack must have had my support if he dared to pull out his gun, I didn't tell him to shoot over the phone. I can also check the phone records. Also, his Glock did misfire. He didn't intentionally shoot. In the United States, it was common for police officers to point their guns at suspects or even passersby. However, this time, they happened to run into a celebrity, which made the situation more complicated. As long as they didn't admit to racial discrimination, everything could be controlled. Even though American Airlines couldn't run away with compensation, the airline company wasn't short on money, and neither was his father. Even though Chun Guang was asking for a lot of money, he could still afford it. He had Baker Law Firm, and American Airlines also had a large law firm that they had long-term cooperation with. As long as they didn't care about racial discrimination, the impact on the company was still acceptable. Of course, no matter how good the situation was, they could negotiate with Chun Guang in private to withdraw the lawyer's letter and withdraw the lawsuit. Then, with American Airlines' control over public opinion, it wouldn't take long for the impact of this incident to fade away, just like how they dealt with many negative news stories in the past. American Airlines was the most professional in the world when it came to public relations. Don't think that this matter will end just like that. I'll let you be proud for a while. Schultz looked at Chun Guang's smiling face and thought to himself. His mind was constantly thinking, it's all because you're a celebrity, but you used the privilege given to you by the Global Airlines Association to hide your identity and face, which led to this misunderstanding. How dare you try to force the entire airline to apologize to the Chinese? In your dreams, after this incident is over, American Airlines will make you pay sooner or later. Really? Mr. Chun, it's great that you're willing to talk. I'm really sorry about what happened before. Regardless of what he was thinking, Schultz's apologetic expression was perfect. With his acting skills, how could he hide it from Chun Guang? However, Chun Guang would not expose him on the spot. He also had a smile on his face. That's right. Let's find a quiet place to talk. Okay, then do I need to call the others? For example, our company's lawyer? No need. No need. I'll call Donder. We don't need to talk too clearly. We just need to reach an agreement on some important points. Schultz thought to himself that Chun Guang's arrangement was right. What they were about to do next would be insider trading, and there was no need to let too many people know about it for the time being. Nielsen felt something was wrong. From Chun Guang's previous attitude, he had not sensed any sign of possible peace talks. But why did he suddenly change his mind? Mr. Schultz, how about Pierce and I accompany you? Nelson said tentatively. F***ck off. You two, get away from us. It's all your fault that we had such a big misunderstanding with Mr. Chun. If they could settle Chun Guang privately, it would be a great contribution to the company. How could Schultz share the credit with others? Nielsen and Pierce were not stupid. Of course, they knew that Schultz wanted to leave the good deed to them. Even an idiot would know that if they didn't catch up now, Schultz would definitely use his father, who was a senior executive in the company, to play tricks and push all the blame onto them. No, Mr. Schultz, we're also involved in this incident. We also want to apologize to Mr. Chun. Nielsen decisively followed Schultz. Rolling his eyes, Chun Guang stopped Schultz from flipping out and said, all right, the two of you can come as well. With more people from Meizhong Airlines involved, the footage would be more convincing. About 10 minutes later, Nielsen and Pierce were scared out of their wits. They stared blankly at Schultz, who was telling them all kinds of things with a serious face. There was only one thought in their minds. It's over, it's all over this time. Oversold? Come on. How could it be oversold? That's just an excuse we use to fool fools. Only fools will believe it. The entire North American airline industry knows that this is the conventional rule. Real oversold passengers can't even get on the plane. This time, It's just 4 American Airlines employees who decided to travel to Dachuan province of China. They seem to be planning to go to Zhuhaigu in China. Yes, Zhuhaigu, Schultz said with delight under the dumbfounded gazes of the other two. But this was not the end. He changed the subject again. This is not a very strange phenomenon in the entire airline industry. Our employees should be so noble, especially compared with the Chinese, who are like bugs. Of course we are nobler. Also, it's not a ridiculous random draw at all. What if we get a white man? What if we get a big shot? We usually call the name directly. If there's a Chinese, we pick a Chinese. If there's no Chinese, we pick another Asian. If there's no Chinese, we can only pick a black person who bought the special ticket. If you don't save the ridiculous ticket money and pay more money, of course, you can enjoy high-end service. All those paupers who bought the special price tickets should all get the hell out of our plane. Poor people don't deserve to enjoy the service of American Airlines. They are social parasites who devour our profits. Nielsen and Pierce thought that the head of the Los Angeles company might be crazy, especially Pierce, who wanted to tear this guy apart. They really wanted to jump up and stop his madness. If it weren't for Chen Guang sitting opposite them, staring at them maliciously, they would have done so. His fingers could pinch a bullet with his bare hands, and now the shriveled and deformed bullet was held in his fingers like a toy. No one wanted to experience the feeling of being poked by these two fingers. Mr. Schultz, isn't there a little problem with what you said? The brave black man, Pierce, interrupted him a little. He couldn't stand it anymore. But it was useless. If it didn't tie Schultz up, no one could stop him from using his eloquence. Is there any problem with what I said? No problem. I swear on my honor, on everything I've seen and heard in the years I've worked for American Airlines, and on my father's name, I swear that every word I've said is true. If there's any falsehood in my words, God will not forgive me. Pierce regretted it. How stupid was I to try to dissuade him? Now, not only did I dissuade him, but I also made him even more excited. This guy must have been possessed by Satan. Forget it. I'll just kill him. Chen Guang silently turned his face and looked at him, as if he was looking at a dead fish. Be quiet, young man, Pierce. The brawny black man, Pierce, gave up decisively. Oh, by the way, I almost forgot to mention that Officer Jack receives a bribe of $100,000 from me every year. He's one of my people. When necessary, he will provide enough power for American Airlines. When I authorize him, it actually meant that I allowed him to shoot and kill the Huaxia people. It's not strange. I've done this before. Killing some inferior human beings can help improve the quality of human beings. Nielsen and Pierce, the two junior staff members, were really crazy this time. On the other side, Chen Guang's soul-stealing finally lost its effect. Schultz's spiritual power was greatly impacted, and his eyes began to lose focus. Chen Guang knew that he was going to fall, so he hurriedly made a gesture to Donder and his assistant. The quick-witted assistant understood and turned off the recording device. In an extremely curious mood, Donder finally completed this incredible evidence collection process. As a white man, Donder could actually understand Schultz's mentality very well. It could even be said that many people in the United States had the same mentality as Schultz. However, no one had ever dared to voice out their thoughts, not even the people closest to them. This would make him a devil in others' hearts. Schultz's words represented the evilest side of a person's heart that should never be seen by others. On the other side, as Schultz slowly fell down, Chen Guang was not moved. He just turned around and asked Donder, "Is this evidence enough now?" Even though Donder was experienced and knowledgeable, he had never seen such a thing. After being stunned for a while, he recovered his wits and said, "Enough, far more than enough. If we investigate the other thing he said he had done before, besides making Mei Zhonghong pay a heavy price, he might also be put in jail." Chen Guang nodded. "Good. That's it. Let's go. Donder, please give me a copy of the video you just recorded. I'm going back to China now. I'll leave the rest to you, and I hope you can give me a satisfactory result." In front of Nelson and Donder, Donder glanced at Schultz sympathetically and then asked tentatively, "Mr. Chen, what if American Airlines pays a huge amount of compensation and wants to settle privately? I think their compensation will reach an astronomical figure. Until now, Donder still believed that Chen Guang would accept the peace negotiation with American Airlines. Now that he had obtained Schultz's heavy evidence, Chen Guang might just want to extract more benefits. Well, he had just taken over this case. Considering Chen Guang's identity and the situation of the whole case, Donder had planned to settle privately with a compensation of nearly $100 million, which was twice the amount that the court might award. But now, after obtaining this video, he could directly propose a huge compensation of $150 million in the court and had a high probability of winning. Even if it couldn't reach this astronomical figure, it would definitely not be less than $100 million, especially in Los Angeles, where there were Kobe Bryant, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and O'Neal. There were many black judges. The Chinese gangs in Los Angeles also had great influence. Schultz's words had almost made him half a step into hell. Then, the amount of the private settlement, which would hurt the Schultz family and American Airlines to the bone, would be as high as $300 million. In this world, no one could refuse this figure. Chen Guang first glanced at Nelson and Pierce, but didn't rush to answer. Donder thought that Chen Guang didn't want to talk in front of the people of American Airlines, so when they walked into the conference room, he said in a low voice, "Mr. Chen, if it's a private settlement, I'm almost absolutely confident that the amount can be negotiated to more than $250 million. I know the wealth of the Schultz family and the economic power of American Airlines." Unexpectedly, Chen Guang asked another question. "What if the court compensates? How much can it be? If you really go to court, the damage to American Airlines' reputation will be beyond imagination. Their stock price will also plummet, and the Schultz family will hate your guts. In the end, the court's compensation should only be between $100 million and $150 million. If you don't settle, go to court," Chen Guang said straightforwardly. "Okay," lawyer Donder responded subconsciously, and then suddenly reacted, "What? No settlement?" Chen Guang nodded. "Yes, no settlement. Go to court. But the compensation will be..." Chen Guang waved his hand. "Doesn't love money? But the difference of more than $100 million is nothing to me, compared to changing the world because of this incident, so that the Chinese can be treated more fairly. I'm willing to give up a single cent. Lawyer Donder, I have a belief in my heart, and this is the real reason why I invited you." "What?" "I want the racists to pay the real price. The more painful, the better. I want people of all colors to be treated fairly. I want all the unfairness in the world to be fair. I want the rich to be merciful. I want the poor to be able to live with dignity. This is the fundamental reason why I want to make it big this time." Donder was silent. As a lawyer, he had dealt with the law too many times and had also done a lot of things to confuse black and white. He worked for whoever paid him and hired him. But this didn't prevent him from appreciating Chen Guang's idea. What a great person. No wonder this newly minted tycoon could achieve such unprecedented success in countless fields. Who would have thought that this young and famous washout person would have such a great mindset? "Mr. Chen, I understand. Don't worry. I'll make American Airlines pay a painful price." "That's good. Thank you and Baker Law Firm for your help. This is what we should do. Then goodbye. I'll come back when we go to court." Chen Guang waved to Donder, then turned around and went to the VIP lounge. Donder didn't notice that the moment he turned around, Chen Guang staggered. Chapter 1135. Chen Guang rubbed his temples calmly. He used soul, snatching on Schultz for too long just now. In order to achieve a better effect, he used too much strength. In this world, anything that involved the human heart was not simple. The cultivation method at the level of the mind was indeed extraordinary. The soul-snatching spell consumed a lot of the caster's body. No wonder Lioli was always reluctant when Chen Guang wanted to enjoy the help of Lioli's god-level hypnosis. Letting her use this move once was equivalent to taking her life. In the past, Chen Guang always felt that Lioli was bragging when she said that using this trick consumed a lot of divine power. After all, there were hypnosis masters on Earth. At least he often saw them on the internet. Moreover, Lioli had a precedent of being lazy and tricking people. It was just that later, Chun Guang mastered the forced PY transaction himself, so he didn't need Liu Li's god-level hypnosis so much. He gradually didn't count on it anymore. Finally, now that he tried the soul-snatching with a similar effect, he knew that it was really costly to tempt people. The forced PY transaction of the Heavenly Holy Grail was always successful, but it was the power of the Holy Grail after all. God knew how much energy the Holy Grail consumed every time it created a world in a cup, which was equivalent to recreating a world. The same thing would be completely different if it was done by manpower or Liu Li, who had limited abilities. Human science had been developing until now, and more diseases have been conquered, but there was no way to deal with psychological diseases. The theory of brainwaves, telepathy, and the soul was still metaphysical, and it still couldn't be explained by scientific methods. There were still countless controversies and conjectures about the theory of the development of the human brain. There were rumors that the average development of the human brain was only about 10%. If it could reach 20% or 34%, 80%, 90%, or even 100%, it was beyond imagination to what extent the human brain, spirit, and even the level of thinking could reach. Countless people speculated in their hearts that if the human brain could run at full capacity like the CPU of a computer, what kind of incredible ability would it have? There was only one reason for such speculation. The brain and the thinking level were too profound and complex. Some scientists believe that the so-called 90% of the human brain might not be completely asleep, but it was still continuously releasing bioelectricity. It was just that the degree and activity of the bioelectricity was not as high as the other 10%. From a biological point of view, the 10% theory might not be completely accurate. However, from the perspective of mental power, and from the extent of development of mental power by inner force martial artists such as Chun Guang, the potential of human mental power and mental power was indeed limitless. But there was also a new problem. Just like when we use a computer, a small CPU and graphics chip takes up more than 90% of the computer's power consumption, and so on. The high-speed operation of the brain also puts a huge burden on the human body. When the human brain was operating at high speed, it consumed the energy in the human body, namely adenosine triphosphate, which was obtained from the decomposition of glucose at an extremely fast rate. The brain only took up 2% of a human's body weight, but it consumed 20% of oxygen and 75% of the blood sugar stored in the liver. The most obvious example was that when an ordinary person emptied their brain or slept for an entire afternoon, they would not feel particularly hungry, even if it was between lunch and dinner. However, if this ordinary person was a senior high school student, after eating lunch and entering the college entrance examination room, he would feel hungry the moment he walked out of the examination room after a short 2 hours of intense thinking. There were many similar phenomena, which often occurred in all aspects of ordinary people's work and studies. The reason was that the brain consumed too much energy. Therefore, if all parts of the brain, or even more parts, were to operate at full speed, the energy consumption should increase linearly. It was very likely that the lunch that a person had just eaten would be wasted in a few minutes. In addition, the process of high-speed energy transmission would also bring great pressure to the human body's blood and other functions. It was like asking an ordinary car that cost more than 100,000 yuan to run for a long time to 200 kilometers per hour. Even if the fuel could keep up, the load limit of the machine would be exceeded and the car would overturn. It was also like using an old computer with the copy software on for a long time. After a long time, it would either blue screen, burn the north-south bridge, or directly burn the CPU. There would always be something burning. Chun Guang used to be an ordinary person, but now he was no longer ordinary. He was the world's strongest internal force martial artist, and he had the peerless divine ability to actively develop mental power. This so-called mental power development, in essence, was actually his own brain operating at a level that exceeded the limits of ordinary people, creating psychological pressure on the other party from the mental level, and thus changing the other party's thinking. Although Chen Guang couldn't find a scientific theory to give him a reasonable explanation for the so-called spiritual plane, and Liuli had never talked about it with him, either. However, Chen Guang often wondered if this was the brain waves released after his brain operated at high speed, which could affect other people's brains. Or could it be the so-called invasion of the biological magnetic field? Now that his body was strong enough, when he used the soul-snatching art, he not only consumed the food in his stomach, but also the internal force in his dantian and the mental power accumulated in his brain from practicing the true martial divine art. This method of accumulating spiritual energy was extremely bizarre, and even Chen Guang couldn't give an explanation for it. Even if he had learned 400,000 martial arts, he still couldn't explain it. He knew that these things were stored in his brain like seawater, and he could use them when needed, but he did not know the principle behind it, and could only treat himself as a rechargeable lithium battery. First, he used the true martial divine art to store energy, and then released it like a battery discharging. As for the changes that happened to his body, he did not know why. This was something that had always bothered Chen Guang. This was the real reason why he was willing to let Tang Ying study his genes. When he was weak, he was very selfish in order to protect himself. However, ever since he became the #1 martial artist in history, Chen Guang had a lot less scruples, and he was willing to let others try to explore his secrets. As Tang Ying said, if he could do something for the evolution of the entire human race by studying himself, Chen Guang felt that there was nothing wrong with it. It was easy to say, but if it was anyone else, even if they had a little bit of selfishness, they would never be as generous as he was. Chen Guang felt that no matter what the future held, no matter how high he could stand after he became the owner of the Holy Grail, and no matter if he could really survive the Holy Grail's test forever, he was still alive, and he would do as much as he could. Now that he had such power and stood at such a high level, he should do more. Even if he died in the 3,000 worlds of trials, he would not have too many regrets if he could leave something for the world before he died. This was the reason why Chen Guang was trying to get involved in the environmental protection industry, and also why he wanted to eliminate racial discrimination and improve the status of the Chinese people through the American Airlines incident. He never flaunted his greatness, and sometimes even seemed childish. However, unknowingly, some of the things he did according to his heart had slowly become truly great. It was just that many people could not understand and would never be able to understand the height of his thinking. Just like this time, many people would probably secretly say that he was narrow-minded, making a mountain out of a molehill, and unreasonable, saying that he was just taking the opportunity to extort a sum of money from American Airlines. However, what was particularly awkward about Chen Guang was that although he had a good reputation, he did not like to explain it to others. Perhaps, even he himself did not know what kind of height he was standing at. He was still immersed in his own deceit. After all, in a sense, it was because of him that the whole world, the whole universe, was about to be dragged down with him. He was also carrying a huge debt of faith points that he could not pay back at all. He was busy trying to survive, and in the process, he tried to do as much as he could. He did not want to admit his fear, but in fact, he hoped that if he failed, Chen Guang would not have come to this world for nothing. He did not acknowledge the worldview of those old men, like Lin Jingwei's grandfather. Those people's theory of ruling a country was like being a chef did not fit his personality. He had his own worldview. He was trying to make the world a better place through his own hands and power. Now, there were signs that things were going to get worse, but this was not something he could control. He could only brace himself and wait for that day to come, and before that, quickly make himself stronger. Passing the world within a cup would make him stronger. Obtaining a divine statue would make him stronger. Increasing the production of faith would also make him stronger. Continuously absorbing the earth elemental energy, floating in the air, would also make him stronger. Doing some things to increase his reputation in the world, or even simply paying off his faith debt, were all ways for him to become stronger. In this aspect, it had to be said that Lin Jingwei had an inconceivable vision and passion. He knew Chen Guang's personality too well. To put it simply, the more capable he was, the more he wanted to do for the world. This could be said to be stupid or childish, but it was also the most charming part of Chen Guang. Like this time, in order to give Mei Zhonghong a head-on blow, he even used a move that he had never used on anyone before. With his current skills and realm, using it on an ordinary person once already made him feel as though his brain had been hollowed out. This feeling was like a person who had no tolerance for alcohol, but had drunk 2 tails of wine. Mother, I'm going to complain. Those hypnotists on television are all F***king liars. They're all liars. In fact, Chen Guang had misunderstood hypnosis. Real hypnosis basically led the subject into a state of self-hypnosis through a long period of psychological suggestion, slowly awakening the inner consciousness under the surface consciousness, and then achieving the effect of a strong illusion. However, Chen Guang and Lu Li's God-level hypnosis was very simple and crude in nature. Through super strong mental pressure, they could forcibly influence the thoughts of others for a short period of time. This was essentially different from real hypnosis. How's it going? What's wrong? Are you okay? Seeing Chen Guang walk back unsteadily, Tang Ying was shocked when she saw Chen Guang's pale face and asked hurriedly. Chen Guang waved his hand. I'm fine. Let's get on the plane and get ready to go back. I'm a little tired. 10 minutes later, the moment they got on the plane, Chen Guang tilted his head and fell asleep on Tang Ying's shoulder. There were no other passengers in the cabin of the plane. After delivering coffee and lunch to Chen Guang, the flight attendants of China Airlines restrained the impulse to ask him for his autograph when they saw that Chen Guang was resting. Thus, they turned around and left silently, leaving the entire cabin to Chen Guang and Lu Li. On the other side, after returning to the Los Angeles headquarters of his firm, Donder decided to directly release the video of Schultz that he had recorded before, since Chen Guang didn't want to negotiate and only wanted to go to court. In that case, there was no need to hide this most important piece of evidence. If he directly released it, he would have an overwhelming advantage in public opinion and give Mei Zhonghong a fatal blow. That night, with the announcement and crazy dissemination of this video, Mei Zhonghong suffered the most serious head-on blow in its history. Today, after the news broke out in the afternoon, the stock of American Airlines experienced a brief plunge. It almost fell to the trading limit of the stock market. Undoubtedly, when the Nasdaq stock market reopened tomorrow morning, Mei Zhonghong stock would fall to the trading halt in a few minutes. A listed company was stripped of its skin and thrown into a naked scandal. God knew how many days Mei Zhonghong stock would fall. In this video, almost every point that the CEO of Mei Zhonghong had resisted was completely refuted. That's right, it wasn't oversold. It was their own employee who wanted to take a plane and decided to do so on a whim. Their random selection was too high-end. It was just a child's play. This was outright racial discrimination. He even said that killing some lowly inferior human beings can help improve the quality of human beings, which was an unforgivable crime. He had even done such a thing. He was simply a devil in a suit and tie. Such an extreme racist was a senior member of your company, and his father was a member of the board of directors. Without an even more extreme father, how could such a crazy son be raised? You didn't just discriminate, you even tried to kill. Your company was standing on the opposite side of all human beings. That night, the unprecedented national boycott came so abruptly. Schultz's terrible remarks were even unacceptable to Europeans and Americans, not to mention the Asians who had been discriminated against in Europe and the United States for many years, especially in the face of the airlines. Of course, the black people, who were becoming more and more influential in America, wouldn't let them go. This situation caught everyone in Mei Zhonghong by surprise. The CEO of Mei Zhonghong tried frantically to contact Chen Guang, but he couldn't get through. He then contacted Donder, but Donder still didn't show any signs of negotiation. Idiot. This was a problem that could have been solved in private, but because of your arrogance, it caused this unmanageable outcome. You could have just apologized to the Chinese people. Now it's over, it's all over. Schultz, your son is a devil. He must pay the price, and you must pay the price too. At the board meeting that was held that night, The CEO was scolded by the board of directors. Old Schultz was in a miserable situation, and he didn't know what to do. But Chen Guang didn't care how his decision would affect Mei Zhonghong. He was still lying on the plane, leaning on Tang Ying's thigh and sleeping soundly. In fact, his current position was a bit awkward, and it was certainly not as comfortable as lying down on a chair. But if he let go of this legitimate opportunity to take advantage of Tang Ying, then he wouldn't be Chen Guang. At this time, he was sleeping soundly. He didn't know that the outside world was shaking violently because of this night's uproar, and some unexpected changes had taken place. Outside, with a series of disturbances, dozens of videos of Chen Guang catching bullets with his bare hands once again swept the world. Previously, the other passengers on the plane had recorded the process of him catching bullets with his bare hands from various angles. Because everything happened too fast, ordinary mobile phones couldn't capture the whole process as clearly as high-speed cameras, but the scene of the bullet's complete deformation was extremely clear. Countless people kept speculating in their hearts what kind of a pair of fingers could actually clamp a Glock bullet so tightly. How fast did Chen Guang's reaction speed have to be able to catch the bullet in such an awkward position at that critical moment? Is he still human? In just a few hours, Chen Guang's name and his two invincible fingers of God, which made many women go crazy, completely blew up the screen and attracted the attention of everyone in the world. Because of this incident, the number of people who knew Chen Guang's name instantly multiplied from 1 billion, 2 billion, 3 billion. The exact number couldn't be calculated, but it didn't matter. Regardless of whether it was in Huaxia or abroad, as long as there was the internet or television news, anyone could tell that there was a Huaxia person called Chen Guang. Eliminating discrimination might still be a long-term problem in the world, but it was precisely because of the heavy responsibility that this matter had become politically correct in the world. For a long time, Chen Guang had been accumulating his own fame, proving himself in various fields, and gaining more people's recognition. He had been accumulating his fame bit by bit, waiting for the day when he would become famous. Now, because of this crazy Olympiad that attracted the attention of the world, and that he had succeeded a few months earlier, his name had resounded in the sky again and again. Now that the god of acting was done, he did something else that attracted the attention of the world without stopping. People were always good at forgetting, just like stars were always outdated. But at least today, in these few hours, Chen Guang's fame had reached its peak. In Los Angeles, outside the Huaxia Theater in Hollywood, and outside the Baroque building of the Motion Picture Association, numerous people of Chinese, Asian, and even Black and Native American descent had spontaneously come to the square under the cover of night. Not only were they supporting Chen Guang, but they're also protesting against American Airlines. At the same time, they're also making use of this opportunity to cry out for the discrimination that they've suffered over the years. Standing under the newly completed bronze statue of Chen Guang, they raised their arms high and shouted his name. They loudly repeated what Chen Guang had said to Donder, the lawyer, and what Donder had said at the press conference just now. May people of all colors be treated fairly. May all the unfairness in the world become fair. Standing in front of the bronze statue of Chen Guang, which represented the end of acting, people who had suffered discrimination and indifference in life had unknowingly become fanatics with this fanatical atmosphere. Light green threads of faith value shot up into the sky in front of Chen Guang's bronze statue, flying straight to the sky and toward the flight of China Airlines that was flying in the sky. The integration of the real world and the real world was still advancing at a stable speed, and the power of the Holy Grail that filled the whole world had never stopped growing stronger. At this moment, in the depths of the distant and boundless universe, a loud sound like glass breaking penetrated the endless void. A crack slowly opened, and a beam of light that was countless times hotter than the sun was emitted from the edge of the crack. If anyone could stand outside the universe and look at this universe that looked like a duck's egg, they would clearly see that it trembled at this moment. Chapter 1136. This shock was too sudden, too violent. For Chen Guang, Perhaps the moment he opens his eyes again, the entire world will become unfamiliar. But for other people in this world, they won't notice anything at all. Just like a fish kept in a fish tank, the fish tank has been moved from the living room to the bedroom, but the fish doesn't notice anything at all. Humans laugh at fish for only having 7 seconds of memory, but they don't know that their so-called long lives may not even be as long as 7 seconds in the eyes of the gods. Or in other words, all living creatures in the universe are like fish in a fish tank. The universe was like a huge fish tank. Chun Guang used to sympathize with the ordinary people in the transient sea. They will forever live in the hopeless cage of the transient sea created by the Transcendent's Holy Grail. But because the realm of transient sea's own laws were not perfect, those who became Sea Emperor-level powerhouses in the transient sea would realize that their world was a cage and would want to break free. But Chun Guang's reality is different. Furthermore, the level of the real world that is fusing with the real world is higher than the transient sea. Simply put, the transient sea is only the 8th level of the Transcendent's Holy Grail, while the real world is one of the highest level special worlds in the Transcendent's Holy Grail. Its rules and worldview are perfect, even flawless, unlike the transient sea, which has many loopholes. Therefore, in the current universe, other than Chun Guang, who already knows the answer, no other person or creature, no matter how advanced their technology is, no matter how powerful they are, they can't become the fish that jumps out of the fish tank. Even if they understand this, they will never be able to find the answer, let alone prove that this matter is correct. How can a person in eternal darkness prove the principle of refraction of light? In the transient sea, because of the loopholes and imperfections of the world's rules, perhaps 1 or 2 beams of light from the outside world will occasionally be captured by Ocean Emperor-level powerhouses, causing them to doubt their own world. But in the real universe, it is truly eternal darkness. People in the real world are like this. They won't notice anything. They will only feel that everything is as it is. Or perhaps they can use their imagination to speculate, but they will never be able to find scientific support and proof. They couldn't prove their own existence, but they couldn't deny the truth of themselves either. At this moment, Chun Guang's real world had become the fish tank that had been moved from the living room to the bedroom. The laws of the 2 planes merging had silently changed everything, from the past to the present, and then to the future, including the memories of all sentient beings in this world. Humans simply could not deny themselves. Just like the ancients, if you tried to explain to them that the earth was spherical and that the earth revolved around the sun, they would think that you were crazy. Chun Guang, who was quietly lying in the first-class cabin of Huaxia Airlines Flight CA 97832, knew nothing about what was happening outside. At this moment, he was immersed in an extremely deep sleep that he hadn't enjoyed for a long time. He didn't know what was going on, nor did he know what was going on. But his deep sleep wasn't sweet. He sometimes frowned, sometimes struggled, and when it was serious, he even unconsciously clawed and scratched. Fortunately, deep in his sleep, he subconsciously knew that he wasn't in danger, so he didn't circulate his internal energy in a state of unconscious, nor did he deliberately increase his strength, so he didn't cause too much trouble to Tang Ying, who was still leaning on his thigh. It was just that this kid's hand would occasionally touch something that shouldn't be touched, causing Tang Ying to blush, a little embarrassed. Fortunately, this was a private plane for the 2 of them, and there were no other passengers in the first-class cabin. If other people saw this, they would think that the 2 of them were unable to control themselves, regardless of the occasion and place, doing some shameful things. Tang Ying blushed and slapped away Chun Guang's devil's claw that was desperately rubbing his C cup, and secretly cursed, "You bastard! Are you pretending to be asleep, or are you really asleep? Can you be more obedient with that hand of yours?" Chun Guang didn't move, but continued to smack his lips and fell into a temporary silence. Seeing him like this, Tang Ying sighed. "Forget it. I forgive you. You're probably too tired, aren't you? I can't believe that a kid like you has such a weak side. You also have nightmares?" Although psychology wasn't Tang Ying's specialty, she had more or less learned a little in Moorlands. At this time, Chun Guang's behavior was reflected in pathology, but it was a sign that he was in a deep sleep, and he was probably still dreaming, and it wasn't a good dream. In the past, Tang Ying thought that Chen Guang's heart was made of iron, but now it was a rare eye-opener, and she consciously discovered his weakness. But this was good because it showed that no matter how high his status became, or how famous he became, he was still the same guy in the past. Tang Ying lowered her head to look at Chen Guang's face on her thigh, and her mind was momentarily at a loss. Time flew, and her memory seemed to have returned to the first day she met this kid. That day, she was drunk, and only vaguely remembered that she seemed to have slapped him, called him a stinky pervert, and scolded him for trying to molest her. Actually, she had completely forgotten about it. At that time, he was clearly booking a car online, and she was the one who called for his car. I think I even vomited in his car. That kid, Chen Guang, must have been furious at that time, right? She really didn't expect that just a chance encounter would bring her to meet such an extraordinary man. Fate was really too wonderful for words. There were countless coincidences in life, but 99% of them could only be passers-by. Every 10,000 coincidences, there would only be one acquaintance, and every 100 acquaintances, there would only be one friend. Out of 100 ordinary friends, only one could become a bosom friend. To be able to meet this kid, Chen Guang, was really 8 lifetimes of bad luck. Tang Ying's face still hung a warm smile, and her eyes were filled with warmth. It was obvious that she was thinking that even if there was no real possibility between her and Chen Guang to be able to become a companion in scientific research and in the journey of life, wasn't it a kind of happiness? But the words that she was muttering in her heart were indeed 8 lifetimes of bad luck. What was even more unbelievable was that at that moment, the black business suit that she was originally wearing today had suddenly turned into a loose white dress without any warning. This change was simply seamless and unimaginable. She didn't even realize that there was nothing strange about it at all. However, this wasn't the only change. Tang Ying's originally perky C-cup chest had now become Mount Everest. That's right, the legendary F-cup had appeared on her body. For a normal woman to suddenly change from a C-cup to an F-cup, how would she react? Crazy? Screaming? Terrified? Ecstatic? Suddenly oppressed to the point where it was difficult to breathe? No, none of the above had happened. She was still as calm as ever, as if nothing had happened. Tang Ying was still looking at Chen Guang's face as she muttered to herself, "Chen Guang, what are you thinking about, chick?" As she spoke, Chen Guang finally opened his eyes slowly. He was in a daze for a few seconds before he abruptly sat up straight and shook his head frantically. Chen Guang's face was pale. He had just had a super scary nightmare. It was simply unimaginable and made him feel like he was on the verge of breaking down. He had dreamt China had become the world's most powerful country. It had become his impression of America, the world's policeman who interfered with the political ecology of other countries. Well, this was a good thing. However, the thing that Chen Guang couldn't accept the most were the other small things. That's right, it was the small things that were everywhere in life. For example, he was clearly in the first-class cabin, but the ticket stated that he was in the luggage compartment. The first-class cabin had become the luggage compartment, and the real luggage compartment, of course, didn't have a ticket, but the flight attendant said that it was the first-class cabin. But this wasn't enough for him to break down. Driving in China had become driving on the left, while the steering wheel in China was on the right. Men weren't called Mr., but Miss or Sister. Day wasn't called day, but night. The sun wasn't called sun, but moon. Oh, right, on the plane that he was on now, the plane was called a train, and the ticket wasn't a plane ticket, but a train ticket. Basically, all the antonyms that could be thought of in life had become the opposite. Everything that could be reversed in life was turned into another concept. In Chen Guang's nightmare, his dad, Chen Guoli, corrected him with a serious face. "Silly girl, are you crazy? This is the first time I'm warning you. Don't call me dad, call me mom. Really, you're getting smarter as you live. You can't even differentiate between a man and a woman?" Well, that first time actually meant the last time. Chen Guang felt like he was about to break down. Then, he ran into Wen in the nightmare, and was dragged into an internet cafe by Wen. She actually made him play LOL and not Dota. She even said that although there were many people playing such a rubbish game like Dota, the Chinese teams had long been beaten up by the Koreans internationally. People with faith would play LOL. LOL was China's way of fighting the world. Chen Guang felt like he was about to break down. Then, he woke up from the nightmare with sweat all over his head, feeling that everything was too terrifying. This nightmare was too real, but when everyone in the dream was faced with something that he couldn't accept or even think was inconceivable, their reactions were so logical. It seemed like he was the one who had gone crazy. Chen Guang had imagined countless situations that he might face after the real world and the real world completely merged. But even if the sky was about to fall, since it was his own fault, he had no intention of running away. He only wanted to use his own strength to face it bravely. But if it became such a world, it meant that the worldview that he had cultivated since he was young would be reversed. God knows how difficult it would be to keep up with others again, and how awkward it would be for him to live. That scene, just thinking about it, made him so disgusted that he wanted to hang himself to death. Oh right, there was one more thing that was especially scary. Sister Tang Ying, who was a standard C cup, had actually become the scary F cup, the size of a basketball. Well, a basketball was exaggerated, but it was similar to a slightly inflated volleyball. In short, it was terrifying. Chen Guang recalled that terrifying scene again, then shook his head violently, trying to wake himself up completely so that he could escape from the nightmare as soon as possible. As a man, although he liked big ones, the F cup was a little too big. Chen Guang, you stinky girl, what were you thinking about when you were awake just now? Look at how calm you are. Tang Ying turned her head from the side, looking at him with a puzzled expression as she asked. Chen Guang was oblivious and waved his hand. No, nothing, Sister Tang Ying. Wait a minute. Chen Guang suddenly froze, feeling that there was something wrong with Tang Ying's words. Chen Guang, you little girl, when you were awake, what were you thinking about? Calm and collected? Poor Master Guang swallowed hard, his brain going through a few twists and turns before he could completely digest Tang Ying's words. Let me calm down and translate. What Sister Tang Ying said should be, Chen Guang, you stinky brat, what did you dream about when you were asleep just now? Look at how scared you were. That should be it. What was the scariest thing in the world? It was like having an unimaginable nightmare. And when he woke up, he found that the nightmare had become a reality. At this moment, Chen Guang's feelings could be summed up in 3 words. That could only be it. F***ck me. With his last hope, Chen Guang looked at Tang Ying anxiously. Sister Tang Ying, what did you just say? Please say it again. Then he despaired. On one hand, Tang Ying slapped him hard on the head, angrily rebuking. You're awake now, aren't you? Call me Brother Tang Ying. I'm such a handsome young man. Don't you feel disgusted if you call me Sister Tang Ying? Wake up your ass. You're clearly in a daze from sleep. No, I'm not in a daze either. I'm very awake now. I've never been this awake in my life. On the other hand, Chen Guang saw the 2 terrifying F-cups the size of papayas swaying in front of her chest when Tang Ying slapped him. She really became an F-cup. All right, the black suit she was wearing previously had now turned into a white dress. Chen Guang despaired. What I just had wasn't a dream. It was all F***king real. He silently covered his face, then turned his head to look out of the cabin window beside him, concentrating a little to communicate with the outside world. At this moment, he finally realized that the power of the Holy Grail between heaven and earth was at least several times denser than before he fell asleep. Through the Holy Grail, he felt the chaotic rules and conditions of heaven and earth. Finally, Chen Guang was certain of this cruel reality. Although he didn't know what exactly happened, nor did he know the reason or principle behind it, but in the short 2 to 3 hours he was sleeping on the plane, the world had changed. Oh, that's not right. It shouldn't be on the plane. It should be on the train or the air-breathing car. F***ck. I'm about to break down. What's with this antonym? Everything has been reversed. It's completely messed up. This world has become completely foreign to me. No, the world is still the world I'm familiar with, but I'm the only one who's F***king on the opposite side of the world. Others definitely won't notice anything wrong. So in the eyes of others, I'm the only one who's sober. No, it should be the only one who's sober. F***, I'm really going crazy. Chen Guang couldn't help but stare straight at Tang Ying's F cup, then yelled, F***, I'm going crazy. Tang Ying was startled by his furious expression. Chen Chick, why are you suddenly so happy? Don't be like that, forget it. Just call me Sister Tang Ying, really? Chen Guang's face was covered in tears. I'm happy. I'm angry. You're all over my face. Brother Tang, I'm not angry. Oh no, I'm not happy. I'm just too confused. Oh no, too awake. Chen Guang turned his face away fiercely, feeling that he could barely speak. I want to die. Oh no. According to the current concept, I just want to live. So King crazy. At this moment, the flight attendant heard Chen Guang shout and quickly walked out from behind the curtain. Miss Chun, what's wrong? Do you need any help? Chen Guang silently pushed his hands. That's right. I need help. No, I need help. Forget it. Don't talk to me. I just want to be quiet. Don't ask me who I am. It's now. On the other side, Tang Ying tried to smooth things over for Chen Guang with a smile. There's something. Chen Chick just woke up. She's a little dizzy. Chen Guang didn't want to speak at all, nor could he. The flight attendant looked at Chen Guang again. Is that so? Then Ms. Chun, do you need a cup of coffee? Chen Guang also felt that he needed to drink water to calm himself down. He took out his cup and handed it to the flight attendant. Help me, no, don't give it to me. Anyway, 1 cup. Pour out my cup. I don't want coffee. Forget it. Give me some tea. No tea. Anyway, tea. The female flight attendant looked at Chen Guang with a completely confused look. Oh, Tang Ying also felt that Chen Guang was very awkward. Forget it. Don't ignore him. Give me a cup of cappuccino. Looking at the back of the female flight attendant turning away, Chen Guang was confused. Cappuccino tea. Chapter 1137. When he saw the cup of top-grade Nanshan tea in front of him, Chen Guang knew that he was finished. His life was finished. Forget it. I'd better reserve a place in number 9 of the Heavenly Palace and live alone in outer space from now on. Chen Guang was utterly disheartened and complained to himself. Then he took his top-grade Nanshan tea from the female flight attendant and set his eyes on Tang Ying's cappuccino. He also had a bad mouth, so he subconsciously said, "Thank you very much." Unexpectedly, the girl's expression changed in an instant. Then she glanced at him with very angry and incomprehensible eyes. Then she snorted and turned away angrily, silently looking at the girl's back. Chen Guang had no strength to complain at all. Perhaps, in this messed-up world, thank you was a very offensive word, right? Maybe it's equivalent to F***ck your mother's hair oil or something. So the girl was very angry. In a sense, her anger was very reasonable. If it was her who had done a good service for you, but was inexplicably scolded to her face, of course, she would also be angry. But I'm really innocent. What else could Chen Guang do but shrug helplessly? The female flight attendant left. Tang Ying also looked at Chen Guang in surprise, as if she also couldn't understand why. Chen Guang was really not in the mood to explain to her. He always felt that in this state where he was completely out of sync with the whole world, the more he explained to Tang Ying, the more awkward it would be. Therefore, Chen Guang simply stopped talking. He just nodded with a wry smile and said nothing. Yes, he had learned from his mistakes, so he didn't dare to shake his head anymore. Instead, he just chose to nod. Nodding should probably mean no. Thanks to the power of the first-class cabin of the Air China plane. Oh no, it should be the power of the luggage compartment. Chen Guang tilted his head slightly and leaned against the back of the chair. He looked sleepy and didn't want to talk. It was not that he didn't want to talk to Tang Ying, but his heart was too uncomfortable and uncomfortable. He felt that he had completely lost the ability to communicate and express himself. When he thought about how he had to call her brother Tang and how he would be called Chick Chun, Chen Guang wanted to strangle himself again. He was really afraid that he wouldn't be able to restrain the urge to jump out of the plane. Seeing that he seemed to be in a really bad mood, Tang Ying didn't blame him. Although she didn't understand why Chen Guang praised the lucky female flight attendant for no reason, Who in the world didn't have a short-circuited brain and bad temper? Chen Guang finally got a short break. He squinted his eyes and carefully looked at the sign above the luggage compartment for a long time. It clearly wrote this sentence: during turbulent travel, use of Wi-Fi and other electronic devices is prohibited outside the luggage compartment of this train. Chen Guang sneakily turned his head to look at the strange white dress Tang Ying was wearing for a long time. Finally, he mustered up the courage to reorganize his words and said, "Brother Tang, cell phones are not allowed on the bus. I can't. This is the oldest rule of the high-speed railway company." "How did you know?" Seeing that he was finally willing to talk, Tang Ying smiled and shook her head. Then, under the painful gaze of Chen Guang, she took out her cell phone and turned it on. Chen Guang was so touched that he almost cried. "Thank God that you didn't cry and say no to me." In addition, Sister Tang Ying's real meaning was that she was surprised that he didn't know. "Forget it. The more I say, the more mistakes I'll make. My stomach hurts a little. Anyway, I can use my cell phone. It's fine as long as this matter is clear." Not daring to speak any further, Chen Guang took out his popcorn phone and decided not to open his mouth for now. He wanted to look at some things in this chaotic world. What can I do? Although it's painful, I still have to find a way to coordinate and synchronize. Looking at his own boot screen, Chen Guang heard his own phone's shut-down ringtone. Damn it! How boring is this broken cup? This bad luck. Okay, how bad is this lucky real world? You can't even let go of my phone's ringtone. When he saw the name of the app on the phone, he was so angry that he laughed. Chen Guang pinched his nose and opened Tencent Old News, resisting the urge to beat someone up. By the way, next to Tencent Old News, the app he often looked at had also become Zhongjian foreign language website. My poor Chidian Chinese. 10 minutes later, Chen Guang finally broke down. You may not believe it, but I really want to synchronize with this world, but it's too *king difficult. He threw his cell phone aside and looked like he had nothing left to live for. You really can't blame him for having weak willpower. Looking at the screen, he could recognize every single word on the screen, but when they were combined into one sentence, his brain was about to go haywire. His Chinese was slightly better, but it was only the order and meaning that was messed up. He tried to look at the Latin news, but this time he felt that he shouldn't call himself the #1 language master in history, but the #1 retard in history. Damn, who the hell wants to recognize these foreign languages whose alphabetical order is reversed? Tang Ying saw that he didn't feel right, and his whole body was uncomfortable. She couldn't help but turn around and pat his shoulder. "What's wrong with you? Are you okay?" Chen Guang wanted to nod, but immediately reacted and shook his head. I'm fine." Tang Ying looked like she couldn't understand. She couldn't figure out what was happening to Chen Guang. Forget it. Are you thinking about healthy things in your brain?" He didn't know what Tang Ying's mind was thinking about. Maybe Chen Guang's abnormal behavior was taken as some kind of very strange hint. Tang Ying even felt that his personality had become grumpy, perhaps because his hints were not being responded to. At this moment, how could Chen Guang be thinking about something healthy or unhealthy, as Tang Ying had imagined? This time, he forgot again and shook his head violently. No, what are you talking about? Don't talk nonsense." As soon as the words left his mouth, Chen Guang saw Tang Ying's immediately seductive expression and knew that he was in trouble. She seemed to have completely misunderstood him. Sure enough, Tang Ying suddenly glanced at the flight attendant's lounge like a thief. Then she bashfully leaned against him, as if she was enjoying the thrill, and said, Slow down. Chen Guang, who was tragically ambushed, stiffened. He didn't know how to deal with the situation at all. He forced himself to calm down and think about it. It was obvious that Brother Tang had been buffed by the double research mode and bold and unrestrained mode. All right, now that he thought about it, he was on a plane. If he could take a sample, it would be pretty cool. With his keen senses as the strongest martial artist in history, he should be able to guard against the flight attendants without worrying about being seen through. As for the camera over there, it wouldn't be too much of a problem under the cover of the luggage compartment. However, there was one thing that he couldn't be sure of. If the whole world had been turned upside down, Then the question was, should he take a sample from Brother Tang, or should Brother Tang take a sample from him? Chen Guang was hesitating whether to take off his pants or not. On the other side, Tang Ying had inexplicably dug out a jar from her bag. That's right, it was a jar. And it was from Chen Guang's own bag. When Chen Guang saw this scene, he immediately understood what was going on. Damn, the Heavenly Holy Grail was really boring. Not only did it not let go of his ringtone, it even forcefully reversed the identity between him and Brother Tang. She had become the guinea pig to be sampled, and he had replaced her identity as the biomedical scientist who was going to take a sample from her body. Although Xian didn't know if the Holy Grail and their identities in the outside world had been reversed at this moment, Xian swiftly pulled up her long skirt and pushed her underwear beneath her high heels. Then she picked it up and stuffed it under her buttocks. She then turned to look at Xian with an excited and expectant expression, saying, "Slow down. Don't come." Seeing Tang Ying, Chen Guang really couldn't say a word. As Tang Ying spoke, she slightly spread her legs, took out the jar from his bag, and placed it under her body. "Brother Tang." As Tang Ying spoke, she still glanced at the flight attendant's lounge with a sneaky look. "Slow down. Such a bad opportunity. Isn't it not cool? Didn't you say you didn't want to use my sample?" Chen Guang decided to shut her up. "Forget it. I can't listen to her anymore. I'll let her sleep first. I really want to knock her out or knock myself out." He silently turned around. No one could resist Chen Guang's God's finger, which could catch bullets. Even he couldn't, let alone Brother Tang. About 20 minutes later, Tang Ying's face was flushed, and she fell into great satisfaction. She leaned her head on his shoulder and fell into a deep sleep. With a stiff face, Chen Guang covered the jar in front of him again, and then put it back into his bag. Then, he personally helped her put on her underwear. Just like that, she was supposed to take a sample from his body, but it became him taking a sample from her body. Well, these things are no longer important. What's important is that I can finally rest my head for a short while. On this plane, while on the train, it was less than an hour, but for Chen Guang, it was like half a century of torture. Looking at Tang Ying, who was sleeping soundly, Chen Guang let out a long sigh of relief. He was so tired. Right now, he didn't want to communicate with anyone, and he didn't want to come into contact with any information from the outside world. He just wanted to seal himself up. He really hoped that this was just a dream, a terrible nightmare. But this nightmare was too real, too scary. Chen Guang also leaned his head on Tang Ying's head and gently placed his hand on Brother Tang's F-cup. This touch, it can't be fake. He pinched his thigh fiercely again. It really hurt. This really isn't a dream. This is too scary. How am I going to live the rest of my life? Chen Guang's mind was filled with confusion, and then he also closed his eyes. He didn't have a good rest because of the soul-snatching spell, and now, after a short rest, he was even more tortured. It could be said that he was physically and mentally exhausted. Perhaps it was for the purpose of self-protection, but his subconscious was like self-hypnosis. Chen Guang fell asleep, and when he opened his eyes again, it was already 3 hours later. "Chen Guang, wake up. We've reached the 5 capital. Wake up quickly." He was shaken awake by Tang Ying. Chen Guang opened his eyes in a daze, and his head still hurt a little. He didn't know if it was because he slept too much, or because he didn't get enough sleep, or the aftereffects of fainting from before still hadn't passed out. "Have we arrived?" Chen Guang rubbed his temples and turned his head to look out the window. "Brother Tang, As soon as he said that, Tang Ying shook his shoulder again. "What, Brother Tang? What's wrong with you?" Tang Ying tilted her head again. "Chen Guang, did you sleep too much? Why are you calling me Brother Tang?" Chen Guang's eyes suddenly became as bright as a 300-watt incandescent lamp. He stared at Tang Ying, and then he tentatively called out, "Tang, Sister Tang Ying. Hey, what's wrong with you? You're really weird today. We're halfway through the flight, and you suddenly want me to give you a sample. Really, you made me so embarrassed. I plucked up the courage to do it for you, but I was so embarrassed. In the end, you didn't even say a few words to make me happy, you little brat. You were satisfied, and then you closed your eyes and pretended to be dead until now. But as soon as you woke up, you call me Brother Tang. What the hell are you doing? Have you been under too much pressure lately? Is there something wrong with your brain? Although I'm not a professional psychologist, I still know a little. Why don't you wait for my meeting today and have a good chat with me, so I can help you? After Tang Ying said that, she pointed to the sky outside the window that was slowly descending. Chen Guang also turned his head to look out the window. He remembered that Tang Ying's original schedule today was supposed to be a meeting with Gokyo University, the Ministry of Science and Technology, and the Provincial Department of Science and Technology. Also, she had clearly misunderstood and thought wrongly on the plane. She had forcefully created the sampling process on the plane, but now it was her who was unable to endure it. But that was not important anymore. Chen Guang felt the density of the power of the Holy Grail and the state of the rules of the world outside. He was so touched that he almost shed 2 lines of tears. The density of the power of the Holy Grail was almost the same as before he boarded the plane last night. The collapsed rules of the world had also unknowingly been completely restored. Restored. Thank God. The world had actually returned to normal. Although Chen Guang did not know what exactly happened, nor did he understand the principle behind it, he felt that it was really great to be able to see the whole world returning to its familiar orbit. It was really great that he did not jump off the plane and commit suicide on impulse. What the hell is cappuccino? Get out of here. Go to hell with the top-grade Nanshan tea. I just want to drink my Westlake Longjing coffee. Damn it, my brain is still a little messed up. As Chen Guang thought about these strange thoughts, he put his hand into his sling bag. That inexplicably wide-mouthed bottle was gone. Thank God. All right. Chen Guang's mind recalled the particularly charming scene when he gave Brother Tang, no, Sister Tang, Ing's sample. His heart was in turmoil. To be honest, that scene was quite pleasurable. He had taken advantage of Sister Tang Ing countless times, but this was the first time he had taken advantage of her unscrupulously and taken advantage of her. Most importantly, in her memory, this did not happen at all. She did not know anything. This was as good as taking advantage of her for free. On the other hand, Tang Ying opened her sling bag in front of him and took out a small test tube. It was filled to the brim with some kind of sticky, milky white liquid. She complained, "You're not bad, you brat. You didn't do anything bad in America this time. This stock is quite rich. It's enough for me to use for a few months." Chen Guang stared in silence. The Heavenly Holy Grail was too awesome. It even swapped out 2 completely different liquids. Oh right, Sister Tang Ying's clothes and her F-cup were restored too. The signboard on the cabin aisle was restored too. During stable flight, the use of Wi-Fi and electronic devices is allowed in the first-class cabin of this flight. Everything was back on track. The laws of this world that had been changed were so tough that they were unreasonable. Under the light of the rising sun, Chen Guang and Tang Ying walked side by side out of the slide of China Airlines CA 97832 flight. Looking at the basin-sized sun in the sky, Chen Guang felt very close. I praise you, the sun. I praise you, not the moon. Tang Ying smacked his head from behind. You've slept too much. You idiot. Chen Guang scratched his head. No one could understand the emotion in his heart. After sending Tang Ying to Gokyo University Medical College, Chen Guang found a coffee shop alone and held a cup in his hand. He could not hold back his curiosity and focused on the world in the cup. He really wanted to ask Liuli what was going on in that messed-up world. Chapter 1138. Your Excellency Liuli, I'm not joking. I really need an explanation. Standing at the center of the city, Chen Guang locked his brows together as he looked at Liuli. Liuli sat in front of her ATM and stared at the desktop in front of her. There was no telling what was on her mind, but she seemed to be very focused. After waiting for a few minutes, Chen Guang couldn't help but yell in her ear. What's going on? You're an emperor after all. Can't you give me a reasonable explanation? While asking, he looked at Lu Li's chest. Unfortunately, it was of no use. No matter how good his eyes were, he couldn't see through the mist that covered Lu Li's body. Sometimes, Chen Guang even felt that it was not as good as when Lu Li wore the feather dress. At that time, he could at least see some of her clothes. Get off me! Get off me! Luli finally came back to herself and pushed Chen Guang's face away impatiently. Chen Guang stepped back 2 meters and said again, "I'm really in trouble this time. I really have no choice but to ask you." Luli sighed. "You may not believe it, but I don't understand it either." "You don't understand it? Then what do you know?" Chen Guang found it hard to love the emperor who had dragged him into this mess. Sometimes he really wanted to be grateful to her, but most of the time, he just couldn't bring himself to love her. It was not Chen Guang's fault. Luli had quit too many times at critical moments. Perhaps, with Luli's help, Chen Guang's fate had been changed. He had turned from a loser who drove an online taxi into the world's most popular celebrity and a new magnate, who was rich and had countless fans. But frankly speaking, Chen Guang didn't feel very happy. At first, when he became rich, he was quite happy and fascinated. But after a long time, he found that being rich or not was not a big deal. An ordinary person's job was still a job. A celebrity's job was still a job, and a tycoon's job was still a job. To put it bluntly, that was all. It was just that he would receive different rewards when he reached different heights. Being rich did not bring him more joy. On the contrary, it gave him a responsibility that he could not shirk from. Furthermore, this responsibility was getting heavier and heavier. It seemed like the future of the entire universe was on his shoulders. Damn it, I still have to be responsible for the lives of those aliens who only know how many light years away, what they look like, and whether they have 3 heads and 6 arms. At the thought of this, Chen Guang was left with an indescribable pain in the balls. All right, the only thing he was grateful for was that no matter what, it was because of Lori and the heavenly holy grail that his mother was still alive and well. That was probably the only thing worth celebrating. But apart from this matter, with his personality, regarding other matters, the so-called wealth, the so-called power, and even the so-called fame did not seem to be what he really wanted. Chen Guang himself didn't know what he wanted. He didn't even know what he really wanted. It seemed like his desire could never be satisfied, but it also seemed like he had nothing to ask for. He didn't even know what he wanted. So how could he satisfy his desire? Women? All right, he admitted that he was not very discreet in this aspect, but that really wasn't the most important thing. Money? Now, it was enough. In fact, it was so much that it was inexhaustible. Reputation? Other than the great people in history, Chen Guang couldn't think of anyone else in the world who could be more famous than him. When the lawsuit with American Airlines was settled, he would probably be more famous than the current president of the United States. As Chen Guang's status in this era became higher and higher, the power he held in his hands became greater and greater. He had a vague feeling that passing the test of the 3,000 world in the cup was still an extremely ambitious goal, but he would definitely be able to achieve it when the conditions were right. Now that his power was established, it would become easier and easier for him to get the statue of God if there were no more problems in the future. Just like when he was studying, he only needed to quietly live an ordinary life and patiently wait for the arrival of the world in the cup. Then, every time he got a world in the cup, he would use the resources and power he already had to find a way to show his ability to the world. This might require a little process, but the result was obvious. No one could stop him. It was as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. Just imagining such a life was so boring that it was unbearable. In short, there was no doubt that after Chen Guang became the master of the heavenly holy grail, after the initial novelty, what was left was the constant torture of being forced to do something beyond his abilities. Besides, after becoming the Earth Popper, Chen Guang gradually understood one thing. Perhaps the heavenly holy grail had already considered that if he was still an ordinary person, it would be impossible for him to complete the challenge of the 3,000 world in the cup at a normal age, and he would definitely die of old age. That was why it made him the Earth Popper in the second world of punishment. Elemental beings wouldn't die of old age, and in fact, possessed nearly eternal life. What about the Earth Popper, who was on the same level as a divine emperor? Now, even if he were to be chopped into mincemeat, he could still slowly recover his human form. Even if his body slowly aged in the future, wouldn't it be easy? He could jump into a meat grinder and emerge from a ham sausage as a good man. When he thought about the possibility of a dull and repetitive life waiting for him, or perhaps after 100 years, people would discover that he wouldn't age, and he would become a monster in everyone's eyes again. He could only watch helplessly as everyone important to him slowly aged and died, while he would be left alone in this world, enduring eternal loneliness. In his past films, Chen Guang had seen many male protagonists like this. Jiang Chun, Huang Tianyu, or some other vampires. Chen Guang could only say that he was traumatized and in pain. He wasn't happy at all. If that was really the case, Chen Guang would feel like he was living like a robot, without any happiness to speak of. So-called immortality wasn't necessarily a form of happiness. So when he first learned that the world might change, he wasn't as terrified as he pretended to be. Instead, he was filled with anticipation and nervousness. Even when he was free, he would often look forward to it. Just what kind of surprise would the heavenly Holy Grail bring him? This time, on the China Airlines flight, he finally saw it for a brief moment. It nearly shattered his outlook on life. If the world after the change was really like this, then he might as well get a spaceship and leave Earth to wander the endless universe. At least he could tell others that tea was tea and that he was happy. I'm thanking you, but I don't want to beat you up. Seeing his crumbling appearance, Liuli also felt that it would be too much to say nothing. All right, but I can only guess right now. Go ahead and guess. It's better than me not knowing anything. When you were on the plane, it was probably because the matter between you and the airline company reached a certain peak on the internet, causing your worldwide fame to instantly reach a high point. Nodding his head, Chen Guang replied, "That's possible. I've asked the Baker law firm to spread my statement, and I've also released the video of that fellow called Schultz. It's quite influential." Under the influence of his soul-snatching spell, Chen Guang's hair stood on end as he listened to Schultz's words, let alone others. Didn't you just complete the acting god statue? This wave hasn't even subsided yet, and the two events add up. Perhaps your fame has already exceeded a certain limit. In other words, most of the people in this world know your name, and they're all implicated in one way or another by fate with you. Chen Guang nodded. I understand this. When a person knows my name, then I've already become a part of his or her life. For those who are close to me, or those who are serious fans of mine, this connection seems to be even closer. Just like when I was in junior high, there was a girl in my class who was crazy about Michael Jackson. Although the two of them didn't know each other at all, and it was impossible for Jackson to know about that female classmate of mine, Michael Jackson played an extremely important role in that girl's life. Liuli seemed to have been inspired by Chen Guang as she suddenly clapped her hands. Hey, why didn't this empress think of it earlier? Chen Guang looked at her in despair, thinking to himself, can I really rely on you? Well, regarding your subjective factors, that's it for now. Next, let's talk about the objective factors. Originally, the integration of the two worlds was still progressing slowly, but when your fame reached its peak, suddenly, Chen Guang looked at her silently. If you keep me in suspense, I might die in front of you with this punch of mine. All right, I won't joke anymore. Suddenly affected by an external force, the two worlds abruptly moved closer to each other. Chen Guang was shocked. External force? That's impossible. What kind of external force can even affect the planes? Also, isn't the real world the world in the cup of the heavenly Holy Grail? Also, my universe is so huge. What kind of external force is needed to be able to do it? A force that can shake the planes? Liuli shrugged. In terms of the intensity of the force, it's not difficult. When this emperor was still the god emperor, to shake a plane of your entire universe, it was just a sneeze. What this emperor doesn't understand is how this external force came about. All right, don't interrupt this emperor's train of thought. All right. Two different planes instantly approached each other and fused together, just like two springs. Originally, these two springs were interlocking because of the rotation. Although the degree of interlocking was increasing, the speed was very stable. But under the effect of the external force, it suddenly pressed down fiercely in the middle. In this short period of time, the springs were pressed together fiercely, and the degree of interlocking instantly increased by a lot. Do you understand this Empress explanation? Chen Guang nodded. Understood. That's good. Just like two strangers coming together, there should be a process from knowing each other to becoming friends, at least chatting for a while. But this external force suddenly brought two worlds together, like two complete strangers suddenly sleeping on the same bed. There will definitely be a lot of friction and collision. Chen Guang, wait. Men and men sleeping on the same bed, no matter if they are strangers or not, there will be no friction and collision. I'm talking about the conflict in living habits, the disharmony in character. Old hooligan, what are you thinking? Oh, all right. In short, it's like there is a contradiction in the tonality between people. When different planes merge together, there will be even more conflicts of rules. If this process is slow and subtle, then it can be a smooth transition, and changes often happen inadvertently without anyone being aware of it. But if this process becomes intense, then there will be contradictions and conflicts, which will then lead to shocks. Just like the two men I mentioned just now, when they fight, the bed will be a mess. Although he knew what Liuli wanted to express, Chen Guang still felt that there was something wrong with the way she expressed it. However, it didn't seem to be meaningful to argue with her over such a small matter, so Chen Guang didn't keep harping on it. Forget it, I understand now. It's because of the external force. The two worlds suddenly came together, and then the rules became chaotic, right? That's why the situation I encountered before, the confusion of words and logic? That's right, but springs are still elastic. After a period of time, they return to their previous state and continue to rotate and twist step by step, and then continue to merge. So when you wake up, the world has returned to normal. Of course, this whole thing is only known to you, and no one else knows because you're the only stable point outside of the original rules of the two worlds. Chen Guang suddenly understood. All right, I understand. Then when the two worlds really completely merge, it won't be like this, right? Liuli thought for a moment. It shouldn't be. What you encountered before was just an accident. Then I'm relieved. All right, before that, I have a question. Go ahead. What did you use the computer for? I watched a movie called Brokeback Mountain. Is there a problem? Goodbye. Chen Guang shrunk his neck, turned around, and left. No wonder the example she gave was so strange. He thought she didn't mean it, but she did it on purpose. He was really worried that if he stayed here any longer, he wouldn't be able to resist the urge to beat her up, but he couldn't beat her, so it was better to leave first. When Chen Guang's figure disappeared from the cup world, Liuli turned back to look at the top of the deer cry fruit in the distance, which had become even taller. Unknowingly, the branches of the deer cry fruit had already emerged from the side of the tall wall of Cloud City. The huge fruit had also expanded to a radius of more than 10 feet, but for some reason, the deer cry fruit still hadn't jumped out from inside. In the past, in the endless God realm, when the deer cry fruit was born after absorbing the spirit of the God realm, it wasn't this big. Liuli scratched her head with a strange feeling. This was another thing that exceeded her understanding as a god emperor. It seemed that no matter what it was, once it came into contact with this heavenly holy grail, it would become particularly strange. After leaving the cup world, Chen Guang didn't rush to go anywhere else, but returned to school first. The day of the final exam was not far away. He probably hadn't stayed in school for more than 10 days this semester. If he set it out, he would be ridiculed by others, so it was time to go back and pretend. But returning to school also had a disadvantage. As he became more and more famous, less than 2 hours after he appeared in the dormitory, the campus forum exploded. Later, the dormitory door was surrounded by people who came to watch the show or to ask for autographs. Although the dormitory aunt could stop the people outside from coming in, she couldn't stop the students who were originally in the same circle. In the past, when Chen Guang wasn't so famous, others acted calmly. But now, people were afraid of fame as pigs were afraid of being fat, and Chen Guang was so strong that he couldn't hide his muscles. Brothers, I can't take it anymore. I'm going to run first. With no other choice, Chen Guang could only apologize to his brothers in the dormitory and sneak out through the window. He didn't dare to go through the main door, but climbed the drainage pipe outside. Although there were people who noticed him, he moved quickly. After landing, he disappeared in a few hops, and then made a big circle before returning to the house he bought in the neighborhood outside. Chen Guang sighed. This was the sorrow of being famous. But he didn't have time to lament the disadvantages of being famous for long, and he immediately enjoyed the benefits of being famous. Quite abruptly, his acting idol suddenly gained another 8 fanatics. Including Irma Watson and the others from before, he now had nearly 100 fanatics just by relying on the god of acting statue alone. It should be noted that unlike ordinary sources of faith, the faith provided by fanatics wasn't within the upper limit of the statue itself. What these nearly 100 fanatics brought him was more than 30,000 additional daily faith points. For him, who was burdened with heavy debts, this was simply a life-saving straw. Chapter 1139. The good news didn't just come from the new 100 or so fanatics who acted like gods. That night, Chen Guang repeatedly calculated his own faith value production capacity, repeatedly compared it, and checked it again and again. Strangely enough, he found that the production capacity was more than 7,000 points more than it seemed on the surface, and he didn't know where it came from. Now that the deadline for the mortgage loan was getting closer and closer, every bit of faith value production meant a greater chance of survival. Chen Guang never thought the legs of a mosquito were too small. After all, no matter how small it was still meat. He was pleasantly surprised at the unknown source of more than 7,000 points of faith value production, but he was also very concerned. With the strictness of the heavenly Holy Grail, there was no reason for it to give out faith value for no reason. After careful inspection and verification, he even traced the threads of faith value that were connected to the production capacity of more than 7,000 points of faith value, and finally found the final source of the surprise. It didn't come from one of his worlds in a cup, nor was it a fanatic, but a statue. Well, in a pure sense, it wasn't his statue, it just looked like him. That's right, it was the statue of the Lord of the Land, Chen Guang, located in the Tangshan Industrial Factory. Chen Guang was pleasantly surprised, and even more so felt that it was incredible. The Lord of the Land was only created by a freak combination of factors, and if it weren't for his thick skin, Chen Guang would have torn it down at that time. He never thought that this thing could actually bring him a pleasant surprise. It didn't seem like much, just more than 7,000 points of faith value daily production. But from another perspective, this was equivalent to an eighth of the perfect world in the heavenly Holy Grail. But the number of worlds in a cup was currently limited. But as long as Chen Guang kept Xiaoguang environmental protection and continued to use this idea to manage more sewage treatment companies in the future and solve the problems of more people, then even more gains could be expected. For example, he could be like many companies that worshiped the god of wealth, Guan Yu, and say that the Lord of the Land statue was a metaphysical existence that needed this thing to ensure the stable operation of the company. Regardless of whether the effect in other places could be as good as the Tangshan Industrial Factory, it was worth a try. There would always be people who would believe it, and, as long as there was money, it would be easy to promote. This time, he learned from his mistakes. Although he still didn't know the reason, he didn't run to ask Lioli. She wouldn't know anything even if he asked. In short, this matter was most likely related to the fusion of the real world and the real world. As for the specific reason, Chen Guang felt that there was no reason for him to cripple this god. This was a question that could not possibly have an answer, just like how he had obtained the heavenly Holy Grail and how the universe had been born. There was no point in getting entangled in these things where the outcome could already be seen. However, he still called Guoming to ask what was going on over there. It turned out that with the completion of the 5 pre-treatment production lines that he had ordered, the 5 most difficult types of wastewater in Tangshan plant were temporarily collected in these large ponds and did not enter the follow-up sections. The benefits of this approach were obvious. The problem of Tangshan industrial plant's compliance was solved by treating the symptoms and not the root cause. The common people were really easy to satisfy. The water coming out of the sewers became clear and translucent, And there was also the spontaneous promotion of the employees. Just like that, the name of Chun Guang of Tongshan's Earth God spread like wildfire. Of course, this was only a temporary measure. Over time, the 5 pools would naturally be filled. With the current amount of water, it would take about 2 months to fill them up. But Chun Guang was not in a hurry. Zhuo Jingxi was completing the transformation of the 5 god-level formulas in the Prin's laboratory. When the 2-month period was up, the remaining capacity of the 5 pre-treatment ponds was bottomed out, and the final operating deadline of Xiaoguang Environmental Protection was about to end. According to Zhuo Jingxi's current progress, she could just make it. Not only that, but Chun Guang's Science and Technology Progress Award was already ahead. Don't ask him why. Ask the group of old experts at the Chinese Academy of Sciences who were so happy that their mouths almost cracked. Even the powerful Prin's laboratory had to sign a humiliating contract to get a little technical support from the Dawn Research Institute, but the Chinese Academy of Sciences was almost free. Chun Guang took the initiative to send a big gift. I heard that he wanted the National Science and Technology Progress Award. Not to mention the first prize. Even if you want us to give you a special prize called Super Wei, it would not be a problem. In the next few days, Chun Guang enjoyed a rare short period of leisure, but he was not happy and even had trouble sleeping at night. Previously in North America, he had already competed with the big shots of the global fighting world, and the high-speed video of Pierce had already been released. At first, the audience did not believe the authenticity of the video, thinking that the big shots like Mouthy Cannon and Connor were shamelessly acting just to cooperate with Chun Guang to promote his movie. How could there be someone in this world who could effortlessly take down dozens of the world's top fighting experts in one go? From lightweight to super heavyweight, they were all taken down in one go, and this person's physique was not that scary. Even if he was a former world arm wrestling champion, this was a little too much. Wasn't it? Wasn't this a little too fake? What about his unlimited stamina? Also, with the size of Brother Dashio and the others, he threw them around like they were children. This was just like a scene in a movie, okay? Look at his thin arms and legs. The explosive power he exerted was not something that a person of his physique should have, okay? Or even if you were talented and could move 1,000 kilograms with little effort, wouldn't you be tired? All these doubts came to an abrupt end after the video of Chun Guang catching a bullet with 2 fingers was released. Chun Guang originally thought that his strongest physical statue of God could be achieved with the help of this trend, but there was no movement for several days. This made him feel a little uncomfortable. Performing God's finger and not even giving the statue of God a chance to catch a bullet. The audience was too much. What should I do to make you guys satisfied? Do you guys really want me to deliberately perform a barehanded fight with an AK? Or catch a sniper rifle with my bare hands? Push a high-speed rail with my bare hands? Or learn from Superman who wore his underwear on the outside and flew into the sky to catch a plane with his bare hands? All right, he might be crushed to death. Although this could also be done, it was a little too deliberate. As a good young man with status and aspirations, Chun Guang felt a little disgusted when he thought of himself pulling a high-speed rail with only his underwear and a hunched back like a gorilla. He did not know if it was because he had done too many shocking things in the past that made the audience too picky, or if the image of heroes in the ancient legends of every country and every nation was too deep-rooted. But Chun Guang catching a bullet with 2 fingers was not enough to satisfy the taste of the world. Chun Guang was frustrated for a while, but he slowly felt relieved. The reason why he could catch a bullet was because of his inner force and the super strong physical body that he had trained in the world in a cup. However, this kind of thing could be done by someone who was at the peak of skin force if they were prepared, much less him, the strongest martial artist in history. Based on the principle that the older the history, the more mythical the legends were in people's hearts. In ancient times, the gods of war or famous generals who lived in people's hearts might have been the top martial artists of that time. Coupled with the fact that the other party's martial arts value was exaggerated to a certain extent in legends and ghost novels, and that there were thousands of years of people following the crowd, catching a bullet with his bare hands was really not enough. Sitting quietly in the classroom, listening to the bustle around him. Chen Guang turned his head and looked out of the window, full of melancholy. I understand the logic, but what should I do now? I don't have much time left. Forget it. I'll go to the company after school. If I really can't do it, I'll ask Yu Hong to arrange for a movie king to pull a high-speed rail. Brother Guang, what are you thinking about? Bai Nyangzi, who was next to him, saw that he was in a trance and came over to ask. Chen Guang said subconsciously, I'm thinking about how to let the whole world know that I'm the strongest man on this planet. Bai Nyangzi turned his head and said to Lin Jingwei, It's over, Brother Guang has lost his mind. Xiong who was on the right side of Chen Guang, silently reached out his furry bear paw. Xiong who was a northeastern man, looked a lot thicker than Chen Guang. Chen Guang looked up at him. Xiong looked at him calmly. His eyes seemed to be able to speak. Brother Guang, it's not that I'm looking down on you, but do you have the cheek to say something like that? Chen Guang thought that maybe Xiong had been with him for a long time and had been influenced by the acting skills of the world faction. Damn it, imagine a big, uncouth man looking at you with a pair of big, watery eyes. What kind of scene would that be? Xiong tell me honestly. Xiong nodded vigorously. That's right, Brother Guang. I've been reading your book too. I've learned a lot. As he said that, he took out 2 beautifully packaged books from his bag. They were the World Faction, published by Chen Guang, and it was a full English version. There were even notes written on it. Chen Guang was surprised. You read the English version too? Xiong smiled mysteriously. Brother Guang, are you looking down on me? You're a world-famous language master now. We're sleeping with you, after all, so we can't tarnish your reputation. You don't know how hard we've been studying English these past few months. Chen Guang said, All right, but I still want to poke your eyes blind. Lin Jingwei, who was next to him, stretched his head over. Brother Guang, can you stop for a while? I keep feeling that you've been too obsessed with being pretentious recently. I've heard from Grandpa that being a person, being capable is one thing, but you also have to be able to keep your composure at critical moments. After a period of triumphant progress, you should take a period of time to calm down and settle down. You can't let your desires dominate your willpower. If you continue like this, you'll easily lose yourself. Chen Guang patted him on the shoulder. I understand what you mean, but wait until I'm done with my work. I'll think of a way to calm down. Chen Guang didn't say anything else. Lin Jingwei was right, but he couldn't calm down. Lin Jingwei didn't know that once he relaxed, what awaited him would be an explosion. Xiong continued to court death and ridiculed Chen Guang's slender arms even more unbridledly. Once class was over, Chen Guang decisively dragged Xiong to arm wrestle. It only took him 5 seconds to press him down on the table before he strode off. Before he left, Chen Guang only said coolly, Young man, I didn't even have the strength to lift my eyelids. After leaving the school, Chen Guang drove to Tianguang Group. He stopped his car downstairs and wasn't in a hurry to go up. The people in the company didn't know that he was coming today. It should be almost time to get off work, and there were only a few people in the company. Although there were a lot of things waiting for him to do with the copyright development of Women, World's Pie, and Luo and Zhu, people had to eat, drink, poop, and sleep. Before he went upstairs, Chen Guang took out his phone and browsed the news with joy. Ever since he was severely injured on China Airlines flight CA97832, Chen Guang hadn't played with his phone or watched the news for the past few days. But he couldn't be blamed. It was really his psychological shadow, and he only got over it today. He didn't know if he didn't read it, but when he read it, he frowned. It turned out that Tianguang Media, led by Chu Zijin, had spent a lot of money to create the variety show Hi. My God, 2 episodes had been officially aired. But the situation wasn't as good as Chen Guang had expected. The cruel truth proved that although he had a golden brand now, this brand had to be put out to be effective. Hi, my God. Although it was created by his own company, and his name was mentioned in the publicity, which made him even more popular recently, it didn't help the show's ratings much. What the audience wanted to see was his face, his show, and not just to be satisfied with his title. The audience voted with their eyes and feet, and even the title of God wouldn't work. Just like the movies we watch now, No matter how famous the director is, if the quality of the movie can't keep up, the box office will still be bottomless. On Chile satellite TV, my God, the first episode's ratings reached 184%, and it didn't break 2%. The online viewership index was even more miserable, as it was crazily rubbed against the enemy stations like Mango TV and Tomato TV. There were many reasons for this. Although Chu Zijin was a genius, and she had spent a lot of effort this time, it was still her first time coming into contact with a television variety show. The team she borrowed was only Little Tsong's Bamboo Platform's online comprehensive team, which wasn't considered the best in the industry. But this was still not my God, the most fundamental reason for the show's failure. If she had to blame someone, she could only blame Chu Zijin for being a little misophobic in certain aspects. It was just like when she was still a webcaster. Although she had a resounding reputation in Bamboo Platform, she didn't fully display her advantages to become an internet celebrity like Chen Guang. Although her various professional skills couldn't reach Chen Guang's level, with her natural advantage as a beauty, if she was willing to think of a way to hype herself up, she had the huge potential to become famous. Her misophobic personality made it impossible for her to be like other people who did variety shows, using unscrupulous methods to hype themselves up. When other people did things, it was good, positive, negative, gossipy, scandalous, whatever. As long as it was a method of hype that human intelligence could think of, it would be pushed forward in all directions without any blind spots. But Chu Zijin didn't do that. Her biggest hype was probably to ride on Chen Guang's popularity and tell others that this was a variety show produced by a company led by Chen Guang. In the list of producers, she didn't even put Chen Guang's name in it. The audience couldn't see Chen Guang's face, nor could they see evidence of Chen Guang's participation in the production, so their enthusiasm naturally faded. When it was broadcast on TV, Chu Zijin didn't do anything about the viewership ratings. When it was broadcast on the internet, she didn't increase the traffic, nor did she hire a water army to hype herself up. She wanted to use the quality of the show itself to speak up, but the result was sad. Without Chen Guang's halo, the quality of her show couldn't reach phenomenal levels. At most, it could only be a passable variety show. But under the crazy competition of countless people in the industry, the word passable was not enough to support a popular show. Therefore, the viewership ratings of the second episode on Chili Pepper TV fell even further, not even managing to maintain 5%. The number of online views also fell far short of expectations. Chen Guang didn't pay much attention to what was going on here before, but now he finally saw it. He stood at the bottom of Lita building and rubbed his mouth. Even with his toes, he could imagine how tormented Chu Zijin must be feeling. Was it really the old man's appearance to suppress the situation? Chapter 1140. The big project with an investment of 180 million seemed to be about to fail, but Chen Guang was not in a hurry because there were still 3 episodes left to be recorded. No matter how bad the situation looked now, Chen Guang knew that as long as he appeared, even if it was only the last episode, he could make a comeback. There was no need to panic at all. It could even be said shamelessly that the audience did not give him face. Maybe they were putting pressure on him. That's right. The audience only wants to see my handsome and heroic appearance. He would not blame Chu Zijin. Although her mental cleanliness seemed a bit ridiculous, it seemed that it caused a certain loss to Tianguang Media. Perhaps she was regretting it now. After all, she was full of confidence at the beginning, but in the blink of an eye, her halberd sank into the sand. But Chen Guang felt that he appreciated Chu Zijin's temperament more than relying on a person who would do anything to succeed. People could be smart, but they couldn't play smart in everything. The failure of the early stage of the show would not hurt the bones, but if the people's heart was rotten, it would be difficult to grow back. Although Chen Guang himself had achieved phenomenal success every time since his debut, except for the Tangshan Industrial Factory, he had almost never used those underhanded means of hype. Every time he succeeded, he relied on his genuine ability and knowledge. Even if these real skills were all taught by the world in a cup, how much suffering he had suffered to learn these skills. After all, this kind of thing could not be explained clearly to outsiders. Just like how Lioli, who often looked at him with disdain, had once said that if someone else did the same thing as Chen Guang, it's practically impossible for them to do it better than him. They would have probably collapsed during one of their revivals in the Cup Realm. The taste of dying and coming back to life was simply a nightmare for ordinary people. And they had to face 3,000 world in a cup, which for many people may even be called an eternal prison. Living like this may be more uncomfortable than dying. Therefore, Chen Guang had reason to think that since he had the ability, whether it was a variety show or a movie, there was no need to use crooked methods. They all spoke with their works. Chen Guang's company, don't use crooked methods to do things. After making up his mind, Chen Guang did not rush to ask Yu Hong to contact him about pulling the high-speed rail with his bare hands. Even if he really wanted to pull it, he would save it for, my God, to pull on the show. Thinking about it carefully, it was all his own business, and he paid too little attention to Tianguang Media. The Shanghai Financial Group was quite pitiful. They had to fork out 1 billion yuan for no reason. Thinking about it, although they were instructed by the old masters to give away money for free, they still held 5% of the shares in Tianguang Media. If Chen Guang could create a business miracle as usual, it was not impossible for them to recoup or even make a profit out of this 1 billion yuan. For the huge Shanghai Financial Group, led by Rao Zhenghai, a loss of 1 billion yuan was not unacceptable. Therefore, even though Rao Zhenghai knew that it was like throwing a meat bun at a dog, he still resisted the heavy pressure in the company and did it. But now it seemed that the program, which had been invested 180 million in advance, was going to be canceled. Chen Guang could imagine that Rao Zhenghai must be in pain at this time. Chen Guang stayed in the company for a while and saw everyone's hard work. He thought that everyone had gotten off work, but most of them were still working overtime. These days, women was still showing well, and the company was very busy. Chen Guang casually found an excuse to distribute a bonus to everyone in the company. After that, he looked for Yu Hong and Su Li and called them over to his office. The Olympic Games were so successful because of everyone's efforts. Xiao Feng and Xiao Lu are still abroad. I would like to thank you two in advance. Sitting in his office chair, Chen Guang looked at his two right-hand men with a smile. Although they did not go to the United States, their workload was no less than that of Feng Tianyu and Xiao Lu. If it were Feng Tianyu and Butt Face who were praised by him, they would probably be very proud. But Yu Hong and Su Li were much calmer. They modestly declined Chen Guang's praise for a while and did not dare to be arrogant. However, Chen Guang could see from their bright eyes that they were looking forward to the other thing he had promised them. All right, we're on the same side, so there's no need to be secretive. Both of you, take care of yourselves. Who's going to benefit from me? I'm not boasting, but my inner strength conditioning can't be bought with money. It's the real deal. Yes, this was the most attractive thing he had promised them. For ordinary people, internal strength was always a mysterious thing. Many people did not even believe that it existed. However, Chen Guang was the boss of the Tianguang group, and his ability had been shown many times in the past. Yu Hong and the others had never doubted Chen Guang's ability in this aspect. Yu Hong was the first to speak. He had been in a subhealthy state because of his high-intensity work for a long time. Recently, he had been even busier. He often felt dizzy, his memory was failing, and his whole body was aching. In addition, none of his friends and relatives had any problems, so he would benefit from it. The specific process was not complicated. Chen Guang asked Yu Hong to sit cross-legged on the coffee table in his office and pressed one hand on his back. Chen Guang then transformed the true martial divine art into one of the 400,000 types of internal strength martial arts that he had mastered. He slowly injected the internal strength into Yu Hong's body through his palm, about the time it takes for 2 incense sticks to burn. All right, half an hour later, Chen Guang stopped his technique. Yu Hong opened his eyes, his face dark and dirty. As he stood up, he kept burping and his stomach rumbled. Boss, sorry, I have a bit of diarrhea. Chen Guang said cheerfully, Go. It's normal to detoxify. You'll be fine after you finish. Less than a minute after Yu Hong left, Su Li walked in shyly. Boss, I have a presumptuous request. Chen Guang did not mind at all. What's on your mind? What's there to be embarrassed about? My father is old and his body is not very good. He liked to drink too much when he was young, so the old problem with his liver is quite serious. Chen Guang waved his hand. That's easy. I'll take care of it myself. Little Su, I'll remember what you said. I'll introduce you to a famous doctor later. Su Li was overjoyed. Thank you, boss. You're welcome. We're brothers. After being a boss for a long time, although Chen Guang did not deliberately win people's hearts, with his current status, even treating people harmoniously was a strong enough method to win people's hearts. That's right. Su Li was still a little hesitant. Chen Guang did not know what to do with his CFO's temper. Just say what you want. Actually, my father is in Beijing, but it's a little inconvenient for him to go there due to his physical condition. Chen Guang suddenly realized why comrade Little Su was hesitant. It turned out that he had to make a trip. Hey, I thought it was a big deal. It's not a big deal. Anyway, I'm planning to go to Beijing soon. Give me your father's phone number and address. I'll go find him directly. Seeing that he agreed, Su Li was relieved and said gratefully, Thank you, boss. Don't be like that. It's not a big deal. As a boss, it's normal for me to comfort the family of my employee. Su Li scratched his head in embarrassment. That's right. I'm too happy. Chen Guang had originally planned to go to Beijing to find Chu Zijin, so he did not delay. The next morning, he bought a direct flight ticket to Beijing. There was also an interlude. Before he left, he pretended to call Chu Zijin to comfort her and comfort the little girl's hurt heart. When she received a rare call from Chen Guang, Chu Zijin did not show much loneliness on the phone. She felt that it was okay, just a little disappointed. Chen Guang could understand her feelings. Although she was facing failure, Chu Zijin had a rich experience of success. She must have learned a lot from the first 3 episodes and planned to use the last 3 episodes to turn the tide. Chen Guang did not tell her that he would be coming to Beijing. He wanted to give her a surprise. He hoped that she really had some great ideas. When the time came, she would cooperate with him. The effect should be pretty good. He arrived at Yinjing around noon. First, he went to the sanatorium where Su Li's father lived and had a cordial conversation with the enthusiastic old man. After that, he made some slight adjustments to the method he used on Yu Hong and repeated it. Before he left, Chen Guang called the Guangding General Headquarters and found a famous doctor for Su Li's father. Other than the 10,000 Flower Valley, there were 2 or 3 other sects in Jianghu that specialized in medicine. With Chen Guang's face, as long as he did them a favor, they would rush to come. When he finished these trivial matters, it was already close to 4 in the afternoon when he arrived at the temporary headquarters of Tianguang Media in Beijing. Since he wanted to give Chu Zijin a surprise, Chen Guang obviously did not want her to know in advance. From the moment he entered the temporary headquarters, he greeted everyone who recognized him and made a gesture of silence. Then, he found his way to the door of Chu Zijin's office and heard the sound of quarreling from inside. Chen Guang was shocked. This was the biggest joke in the world. There is actually someone in the world who dared to find trouble with my people? Standing outside the office of Tianguang Media CEO, Chen Guang pricked up his ears and eavesdropped on the conversation inside. Director Chu, it's really not that we are being unreasonable. As you can see, it's already the 3rd episode of the program. The ratings for the latest episode last night have also come out. This is too low. This is a little out of proportion with the initial investment of our company. If this goes on, I won't be able to answer to the board of directors. In Chu Zijin's office, a middle-aged man in a suit and leather shoes in his 40s was arguing with a red face and a thick neck. There were 3 other people beside this middle-aged man. At this time, they had a similar expression, looking indignant. Looking at these 4 people, Chu Zijin could not help but secretly frown. She really did not think that this kind of thing would happen to her. Everyone, we are all doing things according to the contract. If all business is like what you request, tearing up the contract just because of the slightest bit of trouble here and there, isn't it a little inappropriate? Chu Zijin restrained her temper and said to the 4 people in front of her in a seemingly calm manner. She could not help but be angry. The recent continuous decline in ratings had already made her very annoyed. Especially after the ratings for the third episode came out yesterday, she was even more annoyed. It had actually fallen to a tragic figure of 4%. It did not even enter the top 5 in the country during the same period. Now, Chili Pepper TV, Bamboo TV, and Tianguang Media were very passive. Chu Zijin was also aware of this, but this did not mean that she would admit defeat. Before the dust settled, she still had a chance to turn the tables. Originally, she had intended to use the remaining time to properly plan the specific plan for the next 3 episodes, and then strive for perfection. After exploring the first 3 episodes, she now had a lot of ideas in her mind. Moreover, she had already implemented more specific ideas in her plan. All she had to do was to go all out and start working. But today, my God, the 4 major sponsors of the program had come together to say that they wanted to tier up the contract and not pay the remaining half of the sponsorship fee. Their reason was also very simple. The program's performance completely did not meet expectations. Not to mention the previously signed contract that mentioned the tiered price starting from 2%. Now, even the guaranteed 2% was very far away. The original main sponsorship fee was $100 million, and the 3 special sponsorship fees added up to $60 million. According to the market, a program that could receive a sponsorship fee of $160 million should indeed guarantee at least 5% of the ratings. My God. After 2 consecutive drops, it looked like it was still very far away. However, Chu Zijin felt that this was not a reason for the other party to tier up the contract. There must be some special reason behind it. Everyone had just started talking today, and Chu Zijin knew very well that they might be planning to use this as a condition to ask her to make some changes. Sure enough, the middle-aged leader sighed. Chief Chu, we all know that you're working for Chief Chen. If we really do this, we'll definitely offend Chief Chen to no end. We don't want that to happen either. But this time, in order to cooperate with your program, our Longha Group has taken the opportunity to release all the new products that we originally planned to release slowly within a year to the market. If we can't make use of this opportunity to promote our subsidiary brands, our losses will indeed be huge. The representatives of the other 3 companies also spoke one after another, and their reasons were more or less the same. They could not be blamed for being short-sighted. It was really because Chunguang had too many successful experiences in the past that they were willing to accept the super high sponsorship fee requested by Tianguang Media from the beginning and sign the tiered price contract. Of course, the purpose of these companies' money was not to do charity. Their fundamental purpose was to learn from other brands in the past and hitch a ride on Chunguang's coattails, using a relatively small investment to get an excessive return. Now that their returns were about to fall through, they became anxious. The 4 companies gathered together and came up with this plan to force the emperor to abdicate. Chu Zijin had been a leader of Tianguang Media for a long time, but now she was no longer the innocent little girl she used to be. She could read the general meaning of other people's foxtails and said directly, "Everyone, if you have something to say, just say it. Here's the thing. We appreciate your company's upright style of doing things. But now it seems that the effect is not very good. If your company still wants us to continue to sponsor the next 3 episodes, we really hope that your company can learn from other successful cases on the market in terms of overall packaging and marketing and change the publicity strategy." The middle-aged leader finally revealed his fox's tail. They went around in a big circle and summed it up in one sentence. In fact, they completely disagreed with Chu Zijin's previous way of relying on the quality of the program to speak. At this moment, Chu Zijin looked at the 4 sponsor representatives, and these 4 words popped up in her mind. In this broken era, they want to force an innocent girl into prostitution. Chapter 1141. Chun Guang, who was outside the door, was also infuriated. "I understand what you guys are saying, but aren't you guys looking down on me? You guys are looking down on Tianguang Media, thinking that Tianguang Media will fail if they don't engage in dishonest practices. Then you guys are looking down on Chu Zijin, whom I personally appointed. You guys are looking down on my Chen Guang's taste. That was the first reason. The second reason was that Chen Guang had become half an insider in the entertainment circle. He had even added Jiang Yage and Jin Shuriwei into a certain celebrity WeChat group, but he had been lurking in the group all year round. But he would secretly observe from time to time, treating the chatter in Jiang Yage and Jin Shuriwei's BFF group as pure gossip. This was one of the benefits of becoming a celebrity. He could be in the legendary best gossip observation position, and naturally, he could see first-hand gossip that no one in the industry could see. Nowadays, there were millions of variety shows, and the news was huge. Two people who had nothing to do with each other and were not familiar with each other suddenly got together because of something, and there were rumors about them, and they became a couple. Then, please note, these two people would soon appear in the same movie, TV series, or even the same variety show. Or else, if they were to make a singing show, just the casting alone would give them dozens of tricks. Regardless of who they invited or not, regardless of whether the person accepted it or not, in short, there would be inexplicable headlines on the internet saying that a certain singing god or queen would be joining some show or something. Then, the closer it was to the day of the announcement, the more fans would be dragged out for a walk. Regardless of whether the fans were willing or not, in this world, they had no choice. The singer you admired was originally someone who was indifferent to fame and fortune and only focused on making music, but for some reason he would be criticized on the internet, saying that he was showing off by focusing on making music, saying that his style was either too high or not for normal people to listen to. Are you angry? Are you going to speak up for the artist you admire? Sometimes, in order to deliberately mislead people, many variety shows would go through many twists and turns just by announcing the name list. First, they would let you know who would be in the limelight. Then, they would give you an outline. One moment, it looked like Sun Yinzi, and the next moment, it looked like Deng Ziki. In the end, when the person came out, it turned out to be Kai Qin. On the day the dust settled, Kai Qin suddenly had something to do and couldn't come again. Then, she was suddenly replaced by another big shot guest who temporarily saved the day. The various fan groups who had slipped away could do nothing but scold them for being retarded. Most of the time, under the intentional or unintentional guidance and instigation of others, no one could remain unaffected. Another example, at a certain time, a certain period of time on the internet focused on nostalgia for a certain TV series of the past, or various marketing accounts reposting related clips. Don't be surprised, it was most likely a sequel to continue earning money. Another example, in the middle of the show, a guest who was originally a normal person suddenly went crazy. He attracted all kinds of hatred on the show, saying all kinds of nonsense that slandered tradition and inverted right and wrong, doing strange things like drinking fake wine while doing the show, and then acting crazy. The audience thought that he had really gone crazy and all kinds of attacks and curses, but in fact, he was just being paid to avoid trouble. He was just selling his face and taking the blame. There was no other way. The show needed popularity, and it needed attention. Otherwise, they would invite some extremely strange guest to come out, such as I left my parents at the age of 3 to travel alone, or I sold the old hen that laid eggs at home and walked 8,000 miles to come to this stage. In short, there were thousands of ways to create hype in this world. There were only things that you couldn't think of, but there was nothing that these people couldn't do. In the past, Chen Guang didn't know about these tricks, but after lurking in the female celebrities BFF group for a long time, he often heard people complaining about how they were CP'd with so-and-so, and so on. Sometimes, these big shots were quite painful. It might be for the effect of the show, and under the condition that both parties agreed to hype up, or it might be that the guy was almost past his prime and really couldn't find any ideas, so he found an opportunity to appear on the same occasion as you. Originally, everyone was just nodding acquaintances, but in the blink of an eye, there were groundless rumors spreading on the internet. When faced with such a situation, even if everyone could guess in their hearts that it might be one party playing tricks and making use of the hot topic, they just couldn't find any evidence. Others would only say that they didn't need to care about the media's nonsense, that everyone was upright, and that they didn't need to worry about it. Other than feeling disgusted, there was nothing the people who had their chickens borrowed to lay eggs could do. Of course, regarding these female celebrities' complaints, Chen Guang had forgotten about it after seeing it in the past. Although he had been observing in the dark, he had become numb after seeing it too many times, and he would also start to doubt these people's complaints. Not everyone in the world could be like Jiang Yage and Jin Shuriwei, living so sincerely. These people's words were half true and half false, and there were half true and half false. It was even possible that someone secretly worked to make use of other people's hot topic and then turn around and complain in front of others. It was also possible that she actually knew from the beginning, but in front of her group of girlfriends, she pretended that she didn't know and felt wronged. That was a group of girlfriends, and it was a woman's jianghu. Chen Guang didn't have the mood to understand other people's jianghu. It was too complicated, too tiring, and meaningless. But now, led by the Longhe Group, the four sponsors were obviously planning to pull their own Tingguang Media and their capable subordinate Chu Zijin into such a lowly jianghu. But he was not in a hurry to break in. He was also curious in his heart, wanting to know what decision Chu Zijin would make in such a situation. Chu Zijin, who was facing the four sponsors alone, didn't express her position immediately, but thought for a short while. Based on her original character, she would definitely not hesitate to fall out with them. But this time, they were not wrong in some aspects. Hi, my God. The ratings were indeed getting worse and worse. Next, the program would have about a month of adjustment period. Actually, it was supposed to be broadcasted while filming, and the fourth episode was supposed to be broadcasted next week. But after a discussion between the three parties, including Chili Pepper TV, they decided to slow down and replace it with another program for this month. As for the next 3 episodes of the program, everyone needed to overturn their previous ideas and create a new masterpiece. No one could afford to fail. Chili Pepper TV, Bamboo Platform, and Tingguang Media had invested a lot into this program. Not only did they invest money, but they also invested a lot of manpower and resources. No one could afford to fail completely. Perhaps to Chen Guang himself, this was just an insignificant failure of his company. Even if he lost all 180 million yuan, based on the current box office trend of women, a mere 180 million yuan might not even be a concern to him. But that was only because Chen Guang himself was standing at another level. But to Chu Zijin, Chang Xiaozong, and the leaders of Chili Pepper TV, hi, my God. This program was almost half of their career, and they couldn't afford to fail. After a long time, Chu Zijin gritted her teeth and said, Mr. Li, of course I understand what you mean, but I don't want to feign civility with you. What you hope for won't happen. Our Mr. Chun has never done those things. So, as one of his businesses, we, Tingguang Media, will never go against his usual policy. The representative of another company couldn't help but say, so our 160 million sponsorship fees are going to go down the drain? So we, the sponsors who trusted you so much, deserve to face a complete collapse? The other party was so aggressive that Chu Zijin was also angry. Please watch your words. Mr. Liu from Fuxing Food. First of all, your sponsorship fees weren't gone down the drain. In the previous 3 episodes, we fully fulfilled the sponsorship contract and gave your company's products sufficient time and intensity to promote them. In addition, we signed an equal and mutually beneficial contract, which is a legally binding contract. You chose to sponsor our program because you had your own considerations, and we didn't force anyone. But your ratings failed. Mr. Li from Longhe Group questioned loudly. Chu Zijin's expression didn't change. This is because of the market. This is also a normal risk range. Even Microsoft will lose money when they acquire Nokia. What's so strange about that? Risks and benefits always coexist, right? Seeing that Chu Zijin was stubborn, Mr. Liu threatened again. Since Mr. Chu doesn't accept our opinion, then don't blame us for unilaterally breaking the contract. Chu Zijin was so angry that she laughed and sat back in her office chair. Then I'll see you in court. Mr. Li from Longhe Group wasn't easy to deal with either. Do you think we're afraid of Tingguang Group? In our contract, it is clearly written that as a sponsor, We have the right to make suggestions on the program planning. If both parties have any objections, we can ask for a discussion to resolve it. Tingguang Group has completely ignored our opinions, so of course we can reasonably terminate the contract. Chu Zijin, of course, remembered the relevant content of the contract. She could only say that she was helpless about this, but she couldn't back down. She said coldly, "Okay, then we'll see how it's decided." At this moment, the door to her office was suddenly pushed open. Mr. Li from Longhe Group, Mr. Liu from Fuxing Food, and the others, who were still aggressive a moment ago, turned around to see who it was and froze. They were even at a loss of what to do. Why was Chen Guang here at this time? Wasn't there a rumor that he had just returned to Beijing and was peacefully studying at his university as a reclusive college student? The companies of the four major sponsors had also carefully considered the risks before they set off. They dared to cause trouble for Tingguang Media because they knew that Chen Guang didn't care much about Tingguang Media. Everyone knew that Chen Guang's movies were now very popular. Those who paid close attention to Chen Guang also knew that he had begun to get involved in the environmental protection industry and the photocatalyst industry. They felt that Tingguang Media's small business had become insignificant in his eyes. Otherwise, he would have appeared in the previous 3 episodes. They felt that even if they broke the contract, they wouldn't offend Chen Guang too much. That was why they were so impulsive. But they didn't expect that when they were looking for Tingguang Media's Mr. Chu, they would run into Chen Guang, who was supposed to be studying in Beijing. This was F***king embarrassing. Mr. Chen. Mr. Liu from Fuxing Food said with a laugh. "Hello, Mr. Chen. What a coincidence." Mr. Li of the Longhe Group reacted faster. He immediately changed the topic, intending to lead the topic in another direction. They wanted to put pressure on Tingguang Media and make Chu Zijin yield. But Chen Guang's reputation was also very well known in the country. As for his style and means of doing things, there were even specialized scholars who had appeared on the internet one after another to interpret it. Everyone knew it very well. Take the recent racial discrimination case of American Airlines as an example. Countless people were speculating what kind of price American Airlines would offer to settle with Chen Guang privately. But it had been several days since the incident happened, and every day there were reports of the latest developments from the other side of the sea. There was no sign of the possibility of a settlement between the two sides. Baker Law Firm was extremely tough and received support from all aspects of public opinion. The stock of American Airlines plummeted. Because of this incident, more than 30% of its market value was lost. The impact was even greater than a plane crash. Many people secretly speculated that, based on the losses suffered by American Airlines and the tragic situation of the Schultz family, who was already detained for another case, if Chen Guang was willing to settle privately, he would probably get more than $400 million. But he didn't. Now that the Schultz family had been exposed and American Airlines had suffered heavy losses, there was no other way but to go to court. But according to past experience, even if he could win in court, he could only get more than $100 million in compensation at most. It was obvious that he couldn't live with money. But why'd he do this? Many people speculated about his motives, so much so that they almost formed a Chen Guang school. In the end, everyone came to a very painful conclusion. He was willing. Well, according to Baker Law Firm, Chen Guang wasn't suing American Airlines for himself. He was speaking for everyone who had been discriminated against by the airline industry. In fact, American Airlines already regretted their actions. In order to recover from the decline, they even issued a total of 20 new regulations. The purpose was to self-reflect, apologize to the public, and promise that similar things would never happen again. But even so, it only managed to stop the stock price from continuing to fall. If an apology was useful, why would the court be needed? Chen Guang was clearly harming others without benefiting himself. Everyone had different opinions about Chen Guang's actions. The people felt that he was very righteous and cool. They liked to see him challenge the leading companies as an individual. It was very chivalrous, and he could still win. But those with vested interests were not so happy. They were used to dealing with everything in the way of businessmen. Similar things had happened in the past, But there was never a time when the problem couldn't be solved with money. If $1 million couldn't solve it, then $10 million. If $10 million couldn't solve it, then $100 million. If $100 million couldn't solve it, then $200 million. As long as the problem could be solved with money, it was not a problem. But for someone like Chen Guang, despite holding a high position, he still acted like a barefooted man who wasn't afraid of wearing shoes, which made them feel fearful. They weren't afraid of idiots, but they were afraid of idiots with power and influence. As for Chen Guang, who was already a member of the upper class but didn't have the self-awareness of being one, they loved and feared him, be it in the political and business circles of Europe, the United States, or China. Now the four major sponsors were in an awkward position. They were a little afraid. Chu Zijin didn't feel good either. She hadn't suffered many setbacks since she was young, and this was the first time. She never blamed Chen Guang for not caring about Tianguang Media. Instead, she often blamed herself in her heart. Chen Guang trusted her so much, handing over $1 billion and such a big company to her. In fact, he had volunteered to do so. But now it seemed that she had messed it up. She had originally planned to put all her effort into the last 3 episodes and fight to the death. No matter what, she had to make up for the decline. But today, she encountered the pressure of the 4 major sponsors. She was still in a terrible situation when Chen Guang suddenly came in and showed him her down and out. Chu Zijin quietly looked at Chen Guang's seemingly calm expression and guessed that he was probably very disappointed in her. "Boss, I'm sorry." Chu Zijin sighed and decided to take the initiative to take responsibility. Unexpectedly, Chen Guang waved his hand and interrupted Chu Zijin. "Let's talk about this later. I'll have a good talk with these 4 first." Mr. Li of Longhe Group said embarrassedly, "Mr. Chen, we are here today to see the situation and understand the specific plan of your company for the next 3 episodes." Chen Guang grinned and said with a fake smile, "Mr. Li of Longhe Group, I heard every word of what you said to my little Chu just now. It's not necessarily a good thing for people to have good ears, but there's no other way. Mr. Li, your voice is like thunder. It's impossible not to hear it." The 4 sponsor representatives suddenly froze and cursed in their hearts. "You're a billionaire. How could you do such a lowly thing like eavesdropping?" Mr. Li, Mr. Liu, and the others were in the air for a while, feeling extremely uncomfortable. They couldn't make up their minds at that moment. My God. If they didn't change their strategy, they thought that it would be impossible for them to make a comeback in the next 3 episodes. But if they continue to sponsor, it was basically like throwing meat buns at a dog. It was like throwing money into the water. These 4 companies were all private enterprises, unlike some large state-owned enterprises that could lose tens of millions of dollars without blinking an eye. But now that the matter had been exposed by Chen Guang, if they continued to demand to tear up the contract, it seemed that they would offend him again. What should they do? Mr. Long and Mr. Li hesitated for a long time, frantically weighing the pros and cons in their hearts, but still reluctantly decided to give in. He sighed and said, "Mr. Chen, we didn't really mean that before. We were doing it for the sake of the show. Forget it. It's indeed our fault. Anyway, the day after tomorrow, our company will transfer the remaining payment. How about it?" The other 3 companies also followed suit. Chen Guang looked at these people's sad faces and didn't want to talk to them anymore. Forget it. I'll make the decision to void your sponsorship contract. Okay? You don't have to pay the remaining payment, and we won't hold you responsible for breaking the contract. Of course, the previous 3 episodes have been fulfilled, and we won't refund you. We don't owe each other anything in the future, okay? Mr. Li thought that Chen Guang was bluffing. "Mr. Chen, that's not what I meant." Chen Guang interrupted him again impatiently. "Can we be more honest? If you don't want to sponsor, then don't sponsor. Don't make it seem like I'm threatening you or something. We don't lack money. I'm grateful for the previous cooperation, but for the matters in the future, let's go our separate ways, okay?" Mr. Li and the others looked at him suspiciously. Mr. Chen, do you mean it?" Yes. This time, the people from the 4 sponsors finally left happily. They went back and arranged for people to come to Tianguang Media to handle the handover. When most of them had left, Chu Zijin said hesitantly. This doesn't seem to be a good idea. Chen Guang shook his head. It doesn't matter. They'll regret it. Chu Zijin thought that he was going to settle the score later. Unexpectedly, Chen Guang said, when they see the ratings for the next 3 episodes explode, if it were me, I would definitely find a piece of tofu and kill myself. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.